Welcome, listeners, to another episode on the Cerebral Cricketer podcast. Today, we have a very, very special guest. Solomon Mire was a dynamic, big-hitting all-rounder who played international cricket with Zimbabwe, thrilling fans with his explosive batting and pace bowling. Born in Harare, he represented Zimbabwe, delivering memorable performances like his blistering ODI century against Sri Lanka in 2017. Throughout his time at the highest level, Mire's fearless approach left a lasting impression on Zimbabwe cricket. So currently living in Melbourne, he also runs a cricket academy called Cutting Edge Academy. So welcome to the show, Solomon.
Thank you, mate. I might a few corrections there, but that's okay. I don't run Cutting Edge. I do some contracted work from time to time. I actually have my own coaching consulting business called Advanced to Play. That's mainly what I do now.
Okay, so tell us more about Advanced to Play. I know I've been on the Instagram, and you have a page where you talk about different stuff to do with cricket and training young cricketers. So give us a rundown about Advanced to Play.
Yeah, so basically what I wanted to do was create some sort of an information database or a library that people could go back to and kind of go through some of the information that I shared, just because I didn't want to keep repeating myself with some of the stuff. So I wanted to have that resource platform, or utilize Instagram and some of the other platforms as a resource platform where you could go and go through some of the coaching stuff and mentoring stuff that I go through, or some of the more regular questions that I get asked. So that was the main premise behind Advanced to Play, and then obviously occasionally I'll put up some training videos, and I'll try as much as I can to cover as much as I know. So it's pretty much aimed to share information and knowledge that I've gained over the 23 plus years that I've been a part of cricket. So I think it's always good to share what you know, because you don't know what who you might benefit or where they might be. So yeah, that was the main underlying motivation.
Okay, perfect. Amazing. Yeah, amazing story with that, especially after trying and getting into that. I'm sure, the passion for cricket and the game has led you to kind of do that stuff as well, post your cricket career, essentially. And so I noticed that, like, when I listened to a few interviews, and also on the Cutting Edge website, there was a tagline which was "Train hard, play easy," and said by Justin Langer. I noticed you said in an interview, so I'm just curious, just to kind of start the podcast, what does that statement mean to you?
So basically, I really love that quote, and it's something that I kind of try and live by, and it's transferable, of course, across multiple, not just cricket or sport, but anything you do. But to me, train hard, play easy. It's almost like you've got to go to a place that you haven't been. In terms of the resilience, the push, and I think once you I guess you condition your mind, you condition your body to always operate in that that at that higher threshold. It becomes easy when you come back because you've almost removed that element of surprise, if that makes sense. So you go into a game, if you've prepared and you've left no stone unturned, you give yourself the best chance. You're not guaranteed a success, but you definitely give yourself the best chance, and you're probably at peace mentally that you've prepared as well as you can. So train hard. It's pretty much what it's self-explanatory, but you've got to go a little bit. So whatever you think is your threshold, you've got to try and beat that. That's the training hard aspect, and then play easy. So you almost got to succumb, or I guess accept the fact that it's now out of your hands to some degree. Once you've prepared, it's almost like you now have to let the I guess the you got to let things flow. You can't just sort of get stuck in the conscious. You almost got to just let the instincts kick in. Let the game take care of itself because you've already done the work. So that's the play easy part. Just relax, enjoy. play the game as a game, because the hard work, stays in the nets or wherever else where you train.
Yeah, I thought that tagline really resonated with me personally. So I felt like it'd be really good kind of starting question to ask, because even for myself, like sometimes when we're caught up too much on the results and don't trust the process, then essentially like you take the game way too seriously than you should. And when you do badly, for example, you put yourself in a hole. You don't want to put yourself in that kind of mental state at all, especially with, as you mentioned, things that out of your control. So essentially, it's best to just take it easy, have fun, and, stay in the moment. As you said, like, trust your instincts. But on top of that, yeah, not take it so seriously where, it kind of dictates your, I don't know, mental health or whatever. But I thought that was, like a very interesting tagline as well. And obviously train hard, as you mentioned, just, going at 100, but, at the game, obviously we want to win and play well, but, I guess just got to keep a good balance in that sense. I think that's a really good tagline, even for myself, just to implement on a day to day. Essentially, like this show is to really talk about a player's journey in the cricketing career, and to get an idea of how they think about the game, essentially. So usually we go in chronological order from when they were a kid, get an understanding of how you got into cricket, all that kind of stuff, and then because you yourself played international cricket, to just get an idea of what that was like, and share those insights essentially. And I guess knowing your sort of childhood, having an understanding will definitely help us to understand more about how you went about playing the game, in your throughout your career as well. So just to kind of start off, as a child, did you always play cricket, or did you play other sports? And was cricket your dream when it comes to being a cricket professional?
All right. So initially, I joined team sports pretty late. So I'll probably say I started off playing baseball when I was in grade five, um, and in baseball, I guess I started off at a public school in Zimbabwe, which we didn't have much at the time. So the sport was more like you got one bat that everyone shares, and then you got one mitt. So when cricket was introduced at the school, and I saw guys with their kit bags and the opportunity to have a lot more equipment, that sort of what excited me and drove me to go and sort of try it out. Now, in terms of playing multiple sports, once again, we did play a bit of soccer or football, and we had compulsory sort of athletics. So I was a late bloomer, I guess. I was very small, a small kid. When I sort of started playing team sports, sort of starting with soccer. It was more like just a pastime, I guess, playing on the weekends whenever we got a chance. And my parents were really big on me studying, so it was almost like whenever you get that, when you finish your homework, you've done all your study, then you get the opportunity to go and play. And then baseball was the first sport I took seriously. And then the cricket was a bit easier because it was a family friend who was actually the coach, because they introduced cricket as a new sport. And because he was a family friend, he also pushed me to try it out. But it was mainly because I was excited as a kid to own equipment, which with the other sports we kind of didn't have, or it wasn't as much to go around. So yeah, basically after that, once we joined the teams, we didn't play again for close to 6 months. So I started playing cricket when I was 11, properly, and we trained every single day except for Sundays for about 6 months. And that's when I learned how to train really hard, put in the yards, I guess. And we were so lucky that this coach really focused on the basics, the fundamentals. We were more, I guess, theoretical. at first, like we actually learned how to play cricket in a classroom on a, with the coach with the on the chalkboard and explaining things. So we were trying to visualize a lot of it. And then when we finally got the opportunity to go out into the field, it just became like it made so much sense because we'd already understood the field placements. We understood the cricket shots. We understood, the foundations, how to score runs, what's winning, what's, how do you get how do you set a batter up, how do you take wickets? So it was just the foundations that you probably need. And we were intrigued. So from there, it became a matter of merging what you had in your mind, obviously, versus the physical. And being kids, we really had a lot of fun. So as part of that, we started playing street cricket, which our coach did not like because he thought it would ruin our techniques. Because the one thing about Zimbabwe growing up was they really wanted everyone to be technically correct. So the high front elbow, the check drives, on drives, everyone was pushing for that kind. Whereas in street cricket, they actually had a nickname for it. They called it Jumbo cricket, where it was just, that's probably where I think I honed my skills, my attacking skills, because I was just trying to smash the ball, and we found that a lot more exciting, bowling as quick as you can, things like that. So I think it actually developed our skills, even though the coaches were not so much fans. But from there, I think that's where the journey pretty much started to take legs.
There's a lot of interesting things there I wanted to sort of touch on. The first one would be, so you're saying that at 11 years old, you were basically training every day when it
Pretty
comes to
much, except for Saturdays. Yeah. I
cricket.
mean, sorry, except for Sundays. So we trained Monday to Saturday.
Was that like after school, before school? How did that training?
No, yeah. So it was after school. We would go and start from about 2 o'clock to about 5 o'clock. So 3 hours on average every day.
And you
Yeah.
said that there was a coach, like you mentioned,
hmm
about teaching you the theoretical and then kind of not
hmm
like street cricket. So was that
hmm
the same coach the one that was training you after school?
So he was actually employed by I think, I'm not too sure whether it was the state board or the school itself, or I think it was the state board or the national body at the time might have created it like an incentive where they sent coaches to sort of grow the game, and they were paying for them to travel around the country in sort of the catchment areas they were targeting, because Zimbabwe was in its, I guess, for most people, probably say the golden era. So there was a lot of growth, and these guys started going into communities and building facilities. So they would build nets and stuff. So I think we were part of the first initiative, I guess, of trying to grow the game in the black community, you would probably say, because at the time, I think cricket was mainly a private school sport, which was predominantly in Zimbabwean sort of sense. Was a white majority because of the colonial background that we had. So they try to expand the game by going into public schools and townships and smaller communities, which is high density suburbs, which is where I sort of started.
And so how long would you said every day you train, except for I think Sunday you mentioned. So how many
hmm
years was that happening? That training after school was happening for?
So the last 2 years of my junior school, that's pretty much those were my cricket years. So the first 6 months we pretty much did that 6 days a week. And then once we started playing games, we scaled that back because Saturdays would play games, Fridays would became the day off. So we pretty much trained 4 days, and then we would play, I guess, Saturday the school games, and then on Sunday mornings we would um, meet up and play some street cricket after guys went to church, because back then, most of the guys used to go to church with their families, and then they get their time to play, I guess, before homework at about 4 o'clock. So we had a little window there to meet up as kids, and pretty much everyone that went to the school and a couple of guys from other schools, we all started to meet at one of the guys' house, and we just kept going. So we were pretty addicted.
And how did those training sessions look like? Like, what specifics did you get coached on at that time?
Mm. So the first part was the basics, like I alluded to. So we had to learn how to pretty much play a straight drive, for example. So yeah, it was the understanding the technical aspect of what the straight drive looks like, or I guess what a check drive. We broke it down into check drive, full swing. We didn't call it a full swing then, but it was just the check drive, and then the pretty much we called it just a I can't remember what the name we used back then, but yeah. So we pretty much those were the foundational shots, and obviously defending. So we used to do a lot of throwdowns, and the coach used to use I don't know if you know those cork ball. So when when the old ball gets pretty, or when the ball gets pretty old and ragged, and then you sort of rip it apart and you get that little hard ball from inside. So they used to be called cork balls. So our coach used to have a lot of those, and he would do underarms, to warm up, and then would go into these drills with a stump and no pads. So if you couldn't get your your stump down enough, you early enough, you're getting your front knee blown up pretty much. So we started doing that with the front foot shots, and then we did that with the back foot shots as well. So cut pull shots, and then we all pretty much learned how to sweep, which was even harder when you think we didn't wear helmets. So yeah, you learn to watch the ball, and we didn't really use tennis balls. We used hard balls. So it was either those cork balls or the hockey balls. Rarely did we have cricket balls until Zimbabwe Cricket introduced this sort of plastic ball that they got from Pakistan. I think it was from Ishan or Isan. It was red with the seam, so it could pretty much swing the ball around. So once we got that, you could pretty much get one ball for 6 months, and yeah, we wouldn't destroy that one.
That's really interesting. You mentioned I wasn't expecting the sweep shot at that age, to be honest. Like how you described. This is me maybe stretching, but I noticed like in your international career, you obviously faced a lot of subcontinent teams like Afghanistan, Bangladesh, and you've also
Mm,
had a lot of success against them too, especially against like the likes of Rashid Khan, Shakibul Hassan, etc. So
mm,
would
mm,
you
mm.
say that that skill of playing the sweep shot from a young age definitely sort of helped you perform in those conditions?
Absolutely. I mean, by the time we actually implemented it at international level, we actually went through a few, I guess, stages. So when I first started, the sweep shot was the go-to. Like it was almost like a shot that you didn't even think about because we had practiced it so much. And then once we started, or we got to like first class cricket, we had coaches that had differing, opinions. They'd be like, no, 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 it's too high risk, low rewards because you might as well just hit the ball straight. Because I had power from a young age. They were like, why do you need to sweep? You can hit the ball straight out of the ground or straight over the top and clear the ropes instead of going across the line. So then that started to toy with my head a little bit because I lost that ability to believe in that shot. Now I also played hockey. So once I got to high school, I started playing hockey, and I ended up playing hockey at a high level. So I could sweep without any issues. But once the started getting those mixed messages from coaches, it became something that I had to almost rebel to keep as part of my game. But then it got to a point where one coach actually said to me, "If you play that sweep shot, you're not playing the next game." Like, so it became an ultimatum, and then I kind of stopped playing it until Lance Klusner became the batting coach for Zimbabwe, and then he was like, you need to try and have some of these options when we're playing the subcontinent guys, because I was obviously trying to play as straight as possible, but you're not presenting as much surface area when the ball's turning a lot. So you try and so he pretty much just simplified it for me, gave me the freedom to fail and experiment, and we ended up getting it back. But it took us a few hours. Like we would stay behind after the training sessions and do maybe an hour or two just practicing our sweeps to get that confidence and movement memory back.
Yeah, those are really insightful thoughts there in regards to your journey with, I guess, people. don't realize that there's also those challenges from what you described in international cricket, where I mean, some people will tell you to not play with as much freedom, and some coaches might. So it's definitely must have been difficult, kind of navigating those terrains, especially with the game that you have, and the game, the sweep shot game that you've sort of honed when you were young age as well. So and it's interesting to bring up hockey, like because a lot of good cricketers have played different sports. Like people talk about tennis or they talk about golf, etc. But I think hockey is underrated. So I played field hockey myself, so it
Mm,
definitely
mm,
is, I think, very helpful when it comes to like balance on the ball, hitting the ball to the right areas, this and that. So I think field hockey, is another underrated sport when it comes to kind of transferable skills and hand-eye coordination for cricket too. And I wanted to get your thoughts on just the general life in Harare when you were growing up there, because obviously you're training hard. And I'm sure you're passionate about the sport at that time as well. But in general, how was childhood like for you in Harare?
So I moved to Harare high school, probably my last 2 years. I actually went there late. I actually grew up in a small town called Kadoma, and I went subsequently ended up going to a school which was about 45 minutes away called Goldridge in Kwekwe, which is another town that is in what they call the Midlands region. So that used to be the headquarters of the home ground of the franchise team of the state team back then. So um, depending on which part of the formative years, like the junior stuff, the first 2 years, I kind of talked about that. I was very studious then. My parents really were focusing on me studying. Now, when I went to boarding school with my first year in high school, I guess, yeah, that was different. It was difficult in some regards because first, I guess, joining a private school. When you're coming from a public school system, it was a little bit an eye opener. I guess you're not used to the way the people act in those environments. You had to learn. Manners were pretty big on understanding decorum and manners at that age. But it was also, I guess, my first taste of independence and trying to sort of become your own man. At a pretty young age. So I think I was 12 years old at the time. So I had one of my best mates that I'd sort of grown up with. We got a cricket scholarship to go to this school, and we pretty much stuck together. But it allowed us to learn and observe from other people. But the difficulty from a sporting perspective was we lost our coach, who was, I guess, our bedrock for our game. So we started to learn the game in a different sense. So I remember I was in a different interview with someone, and I said to them, we didn't have access to videos and all this stuff early on. So the first thing we got was a booklet, which was created. I can't remember who it was, old sort of Zimbabwean guy back in the day, and all they had was pretty much images of cricket shots. So how do you play a pull shot? How do you play a flick? How do you play this? So they were like what we call finishing positions, starting positions, finishing positions, and then what you had to do then was visualize the middle part, and pretty much we started coming up with our own drills on working all those or developing those shots, which put us in good stead. And I guess we became coaches at a pretty young age because obviously we somehow I guess we did realize that we had talent because we had been given scholarships, but we were still pretty naive to how far we could go with the game, I guess.
That's amazing. So you sort of tried to do what you can in order to learn more about the game with considering the situation that you were in, as you said, you'd lost your coach, essentially. So I think it kind of speaks to the idea that if you are dedicated enough and you have that willpower, essentially you try to make use of any situation that you're in. So if you're using like booklets and stuff, trying to figure out what shot to play, I think that's very inspirational for many players that might feel For example, they might have not they don't have the right resources or the right people around them in order to essentially learn more about the game and get better at their game. So I think that definitely speaks to that sort of your mental side as well. And so that was your period in boarding school. It was right. So after
So yes.
okay, yeah. So then obviously then you many years later you do play for the Zimbabwe under 19
Hmm.
team as well. So
Hmm.
walk us through that journey from that period to like getting recognized for and then getting selected for the Zimbabwe under 19 team.
Mm. So yes, I played 3 years of under 19 cricket. So I pretty much started it all happened in high school. I was one of those lucky ones, I guess, that got picked as a bottom age. So there were a few of us. I mean, some notable names like Gary Ballance that I grew up with were same age, and he ended up leaving the country straight after his under 19 time when he was bottom age, but I was a non-traveling reserve for the first one, and then ended up playing the last two, obviously, with the Under 19 World Cup in Malaysia as the pinnacle event for us, where we played against your Kohlis and Steve Smiths and Phil Hughes, the late Phil Hughes. So it was an exciting journey because I went from I guess there was a phase where I really became more of a bowler. I was probably one of the fastest kids at the time. Massive run up, but the genetics weren't really in my favor. I was very short, so I was skitty. And then at some point, because I always thought I was a 50-50 all-rounder, I could do both equally, but the quicker I bowled, the more I became sort of selected as a bowling all-rounder. And then at some point, um, when I moved schools, we went to a school where we sort of had to bat. I was batting number three. Me and my best friend, Friday Castini, who also played for Zimbabwe at a young age. So we'd grown up together since we met in grade six, and we started breaking records. Like we would bat. He would open, I'd come in at three, and we pretty much finished the game. So my batting started to come back into the fold, and one. Well, I guess I ended up being selected in the under 19s as an all rounder who, when needed, could bat up top, and when needed, could sometimes open the bowling. So I guess after the under 19 World Cup in Malaysia, cricket took a bit of a downturn. If you understand the situation in Zimbabwe, we got suspended for, I think, political intervention or something like that, something along those lines. Or we self-suspended. I can't remember because we've been suspended a few times, so I can't remember which one it was. But so there was no opportunities, I guess, to keep going, and that's when I started looking for an opportunity to improve my game, and the options were go to England or go to Australia. And through a mutual friend, I was sort of invited to come to Australia, and so I came here. Started at in the country league in Hamilton. That's where I guess I started to. I had actually taken a year off after the under 19s, and that was my first sort of foray back into the game. And then I was still pretty handy at that time, and everyone there was like, "Why don't you go and play in Melbourne because this league is not as strong, for you for your development." So finished the season there, came to Melbourne the following season. Unfortunately, I'd gotten injured, so I couldn't play majority of the season. So I sort of went back home, came in December for Carlton, played in the threes. Started in the threes, then finished in the twos. They just introduced a point system where if you had played any sort of state cricket or under 19s, you carried a certain amount of points. And I couldn't play ones at Carlton, so I did play a few T20s in the ones, but mainly the main comp I could only play twos. So I ended up doing well in that. And the coach or this assistant coach at the time, Brendan Joyce, moved to Essendon. and he reached out to me and said, "Listen, Essendon don't have any players, so if you come, you will pretty much be straight into the ones. There's no points there to worry about, and I think your talent is good enough." So at this time, I was also in Darwin off season because I didn't want to sort of leave the country. I'd applied to stay in the country, so part of that was yet to stay in. So I went to Darwin with a friend, Simon Keane, who ended up playing for the Sydney Sixers. He actually, I think, played for Australia under-19s as well. So we went to Darwin with him, trained really, really hard, and on the way back, stopped in Sydney. Simon's coach, who became my coach, his name is Neil DaCosta. If you know him, he's coached Phil Hughes, Michael Clark, Marnus. He's a big name. So I got introduced to him, and he was the first, I guess, coach since my junior years to really say, "Listen, you've got some natural raw abilities, but we need to pretty much dig into your game, probably start afresh, rip it apart." And this was 3 weeks out from the season, so we took the game apart and trained the house down. I think we were doing 10 hours a day for those 3 weeks, just hitting balls, fitness. But we hit balls for 6 to 8 hours a day, and I'll hit balls with Simon at his house too in the morning. So it was intense, but that's where the real progression started for me in Australia. Because when I came back to Melbourne for Essendon, that's when I got picked in that season started well. Ended up in the team of the year, selected into the Victorian Academy, and then it just went uphill from then.
That's amazing story. So there's a lot to touch on that journey as well. I might touch on maybe at the under 19 level, because when I was
Mm-hmm.
looking at some scorecards, you mentioned Kohli as well, which is really interesting. I don't know if you had any
Mm.
stories to share in regards to any particular big players that are currently now. For example, you mentioned Kohli. If there's any other players that you saw then where you're like, okay, wow, this guy is very high level, and it kind of motivated you
Mm.
to train and work hard. Obviously, you moved to Melbourne in order to play more cricket and develop your game. But
Mm. Mm.
any
Mm.
particular batsman at that time as well that caught your attention?
There were a few Pakistan players that stood out. I'm forgetting their names now, but there was an opening batter from Pakistan. He ended up playing for the national team. There was from the Indian team, I think Tiwari. He stood out. He was a gun. Then South Africa had a couple of guys. There was Engelbrecht. He was a gun fielder, and they had a fast bowler, Arnold. I'm not sure where he ended up. England, I think they had Joe Root. They had what's his name, the swing bowler. He still plays opening bowler.
James Anderson?
Sorry,
James Anderson or someone else?
no, not James. Not James. He's a bit of an all-rounder. I'm actually disappointed. I'm forgetting his name. It'll come to me. But to be honest, that under-19 experience wasn't very well. I guess it was a painful one for us because we were going through a lot. As Zimbabweans, the country was probably going through the worst economic times. So we were a bit of an afterthought with our preparation. As a team, we really, really struggled to gel as a team. Our preparation was really bad. And then when we arrived, we didn't even have our kit. So I remember when we played against Australia in the warm up, some other good players there, Phil Hughes, Josh Hazelwood, James Pattinson. I think David King, who is he's ended up being a prolific run scorer in Premier Cricket. And who else do I remember? I mean, Steve Smith. They were trying to push his bowling at the time. So yeah, he didn't. We wasn't the Steve Smith that everyone I guess knows, and we never really had access to that because I think we got beaten pretty easily by Australia, and we had borrowed the equipment too. So Yeah, it was pretty sad. We had to borrow their shoes, their spare shoes and stuff. Anyways, so the experience wasn't that great, but it was good to be a part of it because, yeah, within a short space of time, Josh Hazelwood made his debut, and we were like, oh, we were playing against him not long, so that sort of, and then Kohli and all these other names started to pop up. Phil Hughes, guys started to. I think New Zealand they had Tim Southey, Kane Williamson. I think I can't remember who else. Trent Bolt, yeah. So all these names started to pop up on the international scene, and we're like, oh wow, we actually played against these guys, and some of them we hadn't done too badly against them. So yeah, it was a painful experience, but it taught us a lot. I guess that we were on the right path, and I guess for some, that's where the belief started to kick in that you could actually go to the next level too.
Wow, that's quite a story. I had no idea regarding, borrowing equipment from the opposition team. Like, because I was looking through all the scorecards and stuff, and
Mm.
obviously scorecards don't tell you that story. That side of
Nah,
things. Really.
now our kid did arrive later, but yeah, we definitely rocked up. We played all our warm-up games, borrowing kit from other teams. It was pretty sad actually, but you know, yeah, back then I think that's probably the worst time for Zimbabwe in general because yeah, it was tough for just an everyday person, let alone trying to put a team together. And put them in camp and prepare them for a World Cup.
There was one particular match that I saw in one of your under 19 games. You scored 31 or 41 against, like you mentioned, Trent Bolt, Tim Southey, and Kane Williamson. I think he was in that team as well. So
Mm,
you come into bat when the Zimbabwe were 5 for 14. So
mm,
do
mm,
you
mm, mm.
recall that innings? Like what went through your mind at that time? That must have been crazy going into bat 5 for 14. I don't know if you had your kit then as well, but yeah, tell us a bit about that.
No, we did by then. I do remember the game because I got run out, and I was so disappointed because it was my best mate that run me out, and he got a 50, Daniel Landman. So it was. I remember watching from the sidelines, and everyone was like, "Wow, that's some fast bowling." I remember the guys were bowling quick, but then it sort of showed me because I love facing quick bowlers as I ended up being an opening batter. That was one of the things that everyone picked up. So, but that was my first sort of experience of facing real quick bowling at that age, and guys were getting hit, before they moved. And then when I went in, I was just like, oh, this is normal. This is easy. And back then, to be honest, I was obviously as aggressive, if not quite reckless, but I think I didn't really have that batsmanship because I was teetering, I guess, between being a bowling all rounder, a batting all rounder, and particularly that game I got injured, and I think after that I ended up batting at the top because I couldn't bowl anymore. So it ended up becoming pretty easy, I guess. But what I do remember was I got into a nice, flow sort of mindset where I wasn't thinking, I was just watching the ball and playing. It was like probably my first experience of, I didn't know much or recall much when I finished. I was like, oh, okay, I just remember getting run out. But the moment itself, batting, yeah, everything was just flowing. And I guess yeah, after an extended period of not playing, I guess that higher level cricket, that was the first point where I started to feel professional.
What would you pin that love of facing fast bowling down to? Because a lot of players, you can imagine, especially youngsters, might not necessarily enjoy facing fast bowling.
Mm,
So, why do
mm.
you think that you enjoyed fast bowling or facing fast bowling?
It was definitely the way we grew up. So myself, my best mate Friday at the time, we grew up together. So I'll coach that sort of type of training that we did with the hockey balls, with the cork, on those hard concrete surfaces with the plastic ball. Pretty much was the foundation for us. And being small kids, we had no choice but to learn how to play, especially the bouncy balls, because those plastic balls were real bouncy. And then we used to play this game called sudden death. And the nets that we had, I remember, were pretty sort of narrow. So you have that feeling of being, in a constricted environment. And we used to play sudden death. So if you're out, you're out. And we used to place fielders certain places. If you hit the ball here, you're out. And the aim was, to try and bat for as long as possible whilst playing your shots. And at the end, we'd always play the last round was always you can't block. So you had to hit every ball and you couldn't run away. So I think that sort of, sort of constraint, I guess, of having a narrow lane to practice in, having bouncy balls, bowlers bowling, a yard or two closer to you. Taught us to just, deal with pace. And more importantly, we weren't wearing helmets. So it was, I guess we had no other way. We didn't know anything else. So I feel like the foundation took the fear off because we got hit a lot as youngsters. Yeah, we had injuries left, right, and center. So I remember I got a big cut on my lip from the ball just rearing off a length. Those cork balls hit something, and then it just cut back in, took half my lip off, and I think we just lost that fear of the ball. So the more the pace bowlers started coming in at us, the more we just felt more relaxed because we had already experienced, I guess, that train hard, play easy sort of analogy in real life.
Yeah, that was exactly the statement I was thinking when you're mentioning like the cut to the lip if you're not wearing, I guess, gear in that sense or protective gear. So that's pretty
Mm.
wild. And touching on your sort of journey in Melbourne, um, because for when you played for Hamilton, you'd hit a century and a 97 in
Mm-hmm.
2009-2010 season.
Mm-hmm.
Was that after or before Neil DaCosta was training with you?
Before, so the time I met Neil was just before the Essendon season. My first
Okay.
season with Essendon. Yeah. So Hamilton, I had just taken a year off. I was coming from a break, and it was mainly I got injured and couldn't get the right treatment. So the injury just kept, it just stayed for a long time, and then eventually I just sort of took the year off, even though it wasn't really planned. There wasn't actually a lot of cricket being played, so it wasn't like I was actually like not playing. It was just um, planning my next steps, I guess.
And so when you made that 190 and 97,
Mm-hmm.
um, you were facing as well before, like the year before, you're facing like the likes of Trent Bolt
Hmm.
and Saudi. What was that experience? Did you find it a similar kind of level of focus required in both that level of cricket and under 19s cricket? Like, did you have to adjust significantly? What was your sort of approach when it came to playing, cricket in Melbourne as opposed to under 19 cricket?
So just to clarify, in Melbourne or in Hamilton? Which one?
Okay, sorry, in Hamilton, yep.
Yeah, in Hamilton. I guess it definitely, even the boys, it's no disrespect, but the level of cricket was obviously way lower than what I had played before. So it took a bit of getting used to. Funny enough, I did score a 50, I remember, at my first game. Um, but I think it was more, that's when I started to I guess, feel the challenge of fighting against your own mind. So being an attacking cricketer in a environment that's fairly easy, you would probably say. The bowlers are slower, but the wickets tend to just have enough, a tiny little bit of movement. No, not a lot, but just enough to sort of put you off. So then it becomes a battle of okay, what's discipline for me? Am I just going to continue trying to dominate because that was probably the biggest change that happened in my game years later. But to sort of understand when to attack, when to hold back, or when to be clinical. That's probably the right word. Um, so back then, I still did perform, but I think I got myself out like most cricketers do, a lot more because the challenge wasn't quite the same. So I found I really did well when there was that constant battle, the constant challenge. The bowlers are really quick. They're trying to sort of, get at you. When they were slower and I felt on top of the game, I'd always end up getting myself out. So that the 100, I was really happy. I do remember because I kind of talked myself through it, even though it was quick. I felt I had actually played the way I wanted to play because at some point, I realized I was, really seeing it well. I was timing it well, and I had to cash in. And the fact that I didn't throw it away, and I sort of played this ball on its merit, even though I think it was 100 off a couple 40 balls, maybe something like that, 50 balls, I don't know. So it was pretty quick. So I felt pretty proud of myself to be able to actually not lose focus throughout that, even though I was pretty aggressive.
Yeah, I can imagine. And because I think, yeah, you did hit 143 for Carlton.
Hmm.
So that must have been insane just watching that, especially at that level of cricket. And on top of that, you mentioned the Costa and the training you did there. I wanted to
Hmm.
also touch on that side of things because, yeah, I'm aware of him because I'm originally from Sydney, so he was a big name, like trained, as you mentioned, the big names like Marnus, Michael Clark, all
Hmm.
these other players as well. I think some international players as well. Would
Yep,
come
yep,
to him.
yep.
I think he also used to do some work in India, if I recall.
You
Uh,
did take a few years, a year or two, I think, in India. Yeah, no, it could be more. I'm not too sure yet. Yep,
and
yep,
you
yep,
said
yep.
that your training was it with him 10 hours a day?
Yeah. So Neil, the beauty with Neil's system was, I mean, I didn't know this at the time, but he obviously had a lot of high, well, you probably say players that wanted to play at the next level. So he had a lot of good players that were seeing him at the time. So every time I went to see him, I always had someone to train with. But that initial phase, I obviously had Simon with me. So the beauty with Neil is well, at the time, what I needed was he would give you your one-on-one time, which, was shared amongst a lot of players, but he gave you enough to work with, which is the perfect type of coaching that I needed because I was always an independent type of guy. I enjoyed training by myself. So just having that direction. So he pretty much picked out a few things about my game, my setup, my grip, I guess the foundation, the basics. And then from there, the strategy side of it was okay, you're not good at playing off the pads, for example, and you got three fielders on the leg side most of the time. So we need to develop that shot to become one of your strengths. So then it became, I mean, then he taught me how to play the shot. So it was probably an hour or two, maybe three. And he would obviously come and go because he's a busy guy, or was. He would come and go, just kept an eye on things, make sure that we were on the right path. But the beauty about his system at the time was that a lot of the players that he trained were really good coaches in their own right because they have spent so much time with him and spent a lot of time also in the company of the superstars like your Phil Hughes, your Clarks, and there's a lot more cricketers that he worked with that are dominating Sydney grade cricket. So all these guys were really helpful because every time someone comes into that fold, it was almost like you become a part of the crew, and someone sees you doing the wrong thing. Like what I loved was like a youngster that Neil would have been working with for 3 or 4 years would actually come and correct me on, like, oh yeah, when you're flicking, you've got to do this. When you're playing your full swing, you've got to do this. And I love that because it was one message. Everyone kind of had the same approach. So the contact hours, even though they were probably not the full 8 hours, I had someone there who knew and who could correct at any given time. And obviously, being with Simon at that time, I was with Simon pretty much most of the time. And another one of the guys, I think his name is Josh Clark, who, yeah, I think has been making runs for fun in Sydney. I trained with Ryan Gibson as well. Yeah, there's a couple of other kids that were there, played under 19s, I think. If I recall, there was Gauchi. I don't know if you remember a guy called Gauchi. There was Damon Mortimer. He played under 19s, might have captained the 19s. There was a few players. I think, yeah. So, long story short, it was always an environment that challenged you and pushed you to work hard. You know.
That's amazing. And what would you say was the biggest change you had to do in regards to it could either be on the mental side or technique or otherwise when it came to training with Neil training with you?
It's multifaceted. There, from a technical perspective, obviously he made me. He created a game that suited me. He didn't really try to make me like technically correct like some of the other boys. I think we might have tried that approach and didn't get the results. I'll definitely say he wasn't a fan of my my wild swing. Let's put it that way. He really, and it's true to a greater extent. I could play technically, but I enjoyed smashing the ball. So I made sure that I kind of never lost that aspect. But every time I was with Neil, I worked on the things that I knew I couldn't work on when he wasn't around. So the big technical changes there was the setup, making sure that I had a consistent setup. I was in a setup that allowed me to go back and forth, and more importantly, I could track the ball better. And then from a mental perspective, the biggest observation I made before it was even apparent to me, from someone else was they had an inward sort of focus. Like you focus on your game. Like you can't think about what anyone else is doing. You can't worry about what's coming at the other end. You got to worry about what you're capable of. And that was amazing because when I came back, I didn't care who was bowling at me. I knew that my game was in such a good shape. The runs were mine to make. The mistakes were mine to make. So that sort of inward focus was probably the biggest mental advantage that I got because, yeah, everyone, I guess you could call it some sort of arrogance, but it was a good arrogance. And I guess the other thing that it really taught me was he was big on a diary, on having a diary and writing stuff, and making sure that any big insights that you get, you find a way to write them down or to record them so that you could sort of cash in on that later, I guess, or go back to it as a resource. So you would always make sure and ask the right questions. It was quite challenging. You'd always ask you like, oh, what did you learn? Or you'd be watching someone and be like, oh, what can you learn from that, or what can you see? And I did live with Neil too after subsequently on following trips, and that never went away. So he taught me to not just watch cricket. So every time I watch cricket, there's things there that I'm picking out. Like it's not just the cover drive. It's like, okay, where's his head position? Where's his hands? So I started understanding patterns, and I use that now whenever I'm imparting some sort of knowledge to guys and teaching guys how to actually learn from watching others.
Amazing insights as well. Thinking about things deeper about the game is definitely
Mm.
important. As you mentioned, like obviously you've built that self belief in your own game to not worry about the bowler that's bowling at you, for example. So all these other aspects, and it's really fascinating. I think a lot of inspiration can be taken from that. And when I look at obviously in your chronology of your career, some of 2012, 2013, you hit another 100 playing for Essendon. I think against
Mm-hmm.
Peter Hanscom as well. He was in that team, if I recall. And then a year later, you're making you're making your international debut in 2014, if I'm correct as well. So I'm just
Mm-hmm.
curious about that little period there. It's clearly, obviously, you're training. This is after Neil DaCosta, only just a few years later. So walk us through that period and how you got recognized for Zimbabwe and got selected for your debut.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I had a great season in Melbourne. It could have been way better because every game, I think I made, I don't know, I might have made 700s. I mean 750s and maybe 100. I can't remember, but every game, I think nearly every game, I got a start. So mentally, I was really good in a good position. I trusted my game. I knew my game, and I think from there, I wanted to continue. I had momentum, so I went back to Darwin, and then continued. I think I ended up having a cracker of a season in Darwin, if that's correct, if the chronology is correct, because I ended up making, I think I made 1,000 runs in that season, and I hit the 200 and 175 or something. So the biggest challenge for me when I came back from Sydney to Essendon was Brendan Joyce really challenged me to try and convert, because I was scoring 50s and I was getting starts 20s, 30s. But the issue was, he was like, if you want to play higher, you've got to convert, because no one selects, no one really remembers the 50s. People like to, for a batter, you've got to be remembered by the hundreds. But being an aggressive player, it's like it's a very challenging, I guess, way of it's pretty challenging to be able to convert. At the same time, you've got the amount of risks that you take. So balancing that, it's pretty tough. Anyways, regardless, I figured out, and it's not to brag, but I figured out that I could make 100 if I put away the big shots, so to speak. The Joyce used to call them the calypso shots. But I also figured out that I didn't enjoy my batting if I didn't take on the bowlers. So at some point, I realized that in order to get selected in anything, I had to almost, um, you know, put away the big shots, like sacrifice the game that I wanted to play in order to be picked. And then once I got picked and sort of settled into a role, then I'd expand my game. So it was almost like cat and mouse. So part of that came with accepting that the stats would never be at the level that most people would be happy with. But I was pretty happy with just dominating fast bowlers, and that I didn't care about the stats. So now I get to Darwin, have a great season, and I get a lot of big bash teams sort of interested, because that's where the interest from Zimbabwe started to increase as well. So I got a few calls from the Stars and the Renegades at the time, and Brendan Joyce was good friends with Simon Helmer, who was the Renegades coach. So I had actually tentatively agreed to go to the Stars. I'd got a call from Greg Shippard at the time. But after sort of spoke with Joycey and ended up sort of agreeing to go with the Renegades, and went through that phase. It probably was very short and exciting time. I felt like I was at the top of my game, but didn't really, get that opportunity. For starters, I didn't have the right. Well, I wasn't an Australian citizen, so I had to get in the sort of rookie program that they had, the international rookie program. I don't know what it was called. So got in that way, and then they tried to, they applied for me to be pushed into the main squad after we lost a few guys to injury. I think it was a guy called Doc Harris who used to open the batting, got injured. And then being an opener, and I had actually scored 100 in a warm-up game against the Renegades. So it was like one of those warm-up games you play. I was playing for the Williamson Academy against the Renegades preseason games. So made 100 against the Renegades, and I thought, I'm definitely going to play. But it got pretty. It was more complicated than that, because they had a pretty set team, and you're competing against Aaron Finch, who was an absolute jet at the time too. So the coach was like, okay, as soon as these guys go to national team, then they'll get a call up, you get an opportunity. And I guess we just never got that momentum, we never got that alignment, and ended up just getting 2 games in the Renegades where I was coming in as a floating batter. I think I come in at 7 or 8 both games and just faced 1 or 2 balls. So that was the journey. But then, because I'd made headlines with my 260 in a one-day game, and I'd made 100 in the warm-up game for the Renegades, the Zimbabwean guys who were keeping a close eye were like, listen, man, you need to come back. You would be straight into the team. Like, we believe that you're playing a high level of cricket, and we're struggling for batters. So why don't you consider it? And for a long time, I kept saying no. no, not interested, not interested, not interested. Just because I really was trying to push for a case here, and I'd been selected into the sort of Vic Second 11 team, and I was part of the academy. So I was playing warm up games with the Victorian team as well, sort of interacting, Bobby Quiney, Stoinis, John Hastings, all those guys regularly. So I was a little bit stuck in two places, and then I got frustrated just because my game was so consistent, but I felt like I was just not being challenged enough, and I felt like I was ready to take the next step. Now, not having Australian citizenship at the time, the only way for me to play first class cricket was to, get my residency. So, spoke to the immigration guys, and they're like, "Well, if you play a few international games, you straight away you'll be, you get your citizenship because you'll meet the criteria, which was a distinguished talent or skill migration through sport." So that's when I ended up deciding to go and, made my debut in Bangladesh. That's hopefully the long story short.
Wow, that's a really big journey. Like so much to talk. Like you mentioned that you were part of the sort of Victorian squad, like training with them as
Mm,
well
mm, mm,
that period.
mm,
So talk us through that experience and who you were training with, especially with you mentioned Renegades as well. What was your biggest
mm,
learning?
mm,
Because obviously you're playing and training with all these gun cricketers. What
mm,
was
mm, mm.
your learnings from those experiences?
I mean, I got an appreciation of what a high level of skill is, and I think a lot of players would benefit if they could get that close contact and just see how it's you're not far off, but until you see it in person, it sort of doesn't. I guess it doesn't materialize in your head that it's possible. So it's like once you see guys execute skill, like I remember watching James Pattinson bowl into, I think it was, what was his name? He batted number three for Australia for a short period of time from Tassie. Something Doolan? What's his name again?
Alex Dillon?
Yeah, Alex Doolan. So I remember watching him bat against Jimmy Pattinson, and obviously Jimmy was bowling rockets, right? But he had so much time, playing his shots, and I like to play the pull shot. And I remember watching this guy; he really played a good pull shot in the nets, which was really like amazing considering everything is constrained. Like nets, I just find if you can play your shots and execute well in a net environment, you could pretty much do it with ease when you get out into the field. So watching those guys just made me feel like I had another level to go in terms of the way I trained, and I did end up taking it to another level, even though I got injured trying. So I would crank up the bowling machine and practice my pull shots at high speeds because I had seen other people do it, and I was like, oh yeah, so if he can do it, it's possible. And funny enough, yeah, you do it incrementally, and you actually start to make strides. And Dwayne Bravo, funny enough, we built a pretty good relationship. He was good friends with my cousin who played for Zimbabwe, so he kind of made an intro. And when I met him through the Renegades, we became pretty good mates. And his mind was amazing. Just the way he prepared, he was so like he never left any stone unturned. Like he would try and get as much information about the opposition, where they like to hit, the swing. Like you really, people see Bravo and I don't know what they see, the flamboyance, but he was a very well prepared guy. And I learned a lot from that because I was also bowling. So he had a plan for everyone and he loved the challenge. Like he really loved it from training all the way. Like so, it's sort of the big lesson from that was what people there's the cliche statement that most people make like, oh, train the way you play. He really epitomizes that. Like for him, competition started in almost everything he did. From little games, like playing card games or pool to the net session. So learning from those guys, Murali was really good. He was fun. He was someone that took the game pretty. I mean, at that time he had already, dominated international cricket, and he was on the way out. So he was very relaxed. From Finchy, I mean, he was a calm sort of leader, and I think from my experience dealing with Finch, I realized, like there are moments when you can be frustrated, but he was very good with sort of that handling, that emotion and sort of not, I guess, getting everyone else, to sort of feel the pressure. He was really good with absorbing the pressure and being the leader. Very simple, very. He kept it very simple. So yeah, he wanted guys to have simple plans for their batting, simple plans for their bowling. That's probably the first time I started hearing a lot more cliche statements like. And I was like, oh yeah, so it's not rocket science when you go to the top. So Fincher would be like, all right, guys, it's pretty simple. Like if the ball's in your zone, you go for it. Simple things like that. They make a big difference. But for a youngster, you're thinking, you got to watch the ball. You got to do this. You got to do that. But at some point, you got to throw it all away and just hit the ball in your zone. So those were some of the big sort of nuggets that I picked up from that.
I think this is a good place to also ask about, like you talked about wanting to really practice the pull shot and cranking up the bowling machine, and
Hmm.
watching other players playing it with so much time. So when it comes to your batting specifically,
Hmm.
did you have a process at that time that you followed? Like, for example, if the bowler's watching in, if the bowler's coming in to the crease and about to deliver
Hmm.
the ball, like, are you
Hmm.
actively trying to watch the ball out of their hand, actively trying to read the length earlier, and trying to get into good positions? And did you already kind of work out your own, for example, trigger movement in that period to complement that sort of approach to your batting? So I just wanted to understand a bit of your batting process as well at that point in time.
Yeah, so I mean, we'd refined it in Sydney. So Neil was big on ball tracking. So he had this technique of shoulder alignment, which I guess allowed you to get a better sort of trajectory of the ball from point of release to where it bounces. So I mean, Ponting talks about the box that he looked at. It's pretty much the same thing, right? So if you can lock your head in a certain position on a wicket, that allows your eyes to go up and down, you can track the ball better. So I had that process pretty much down to a pad. I'd worked with Neil on that, and everyone had it differently. But for me, most batters that I work with didn't have a trigger, so I had a trigger. So I had to find a way to kind of make it work. And subsequently, that ended up making me realize that I was setting up pretty much for the pull shot. So then I realized, that I had two strengths. I was obviously picking up the ball early, so I could hit anything full and I could hit anything short. And then in between, I had to just figure out how to pretty much, get off strike. So I had my game simplified. And funny enough, the ball tracking became, I guess, the main thing or the main pillar, because you can't do all that if you can't see the ball. Now, to say I was actually looking at the bowler's hand, it's probably that's a lie. I think I looked at a certain area, that release sort of area, but I definitely didn't try and watch the ball all the way. There's an article that Greg Chappell wrote, actually, which I came across. It's similar at some point, and he talks about, you're trying to make sure that you time your focus. You don't just look at the ball. You look over. You pretty much over focus, and then you end up getting tired too early. So because your mental, I guess you've got so much energy, it's finite, and you've got to, your resources have to be shared, and used smartly. So you try and relax when the ball is running in, and just make sure that your body is in the right positions, and you get your head in the right position, and then just as it's about to jump, that's when you really get that, focus and try and wash the ball. And funny enough, you pretty much switch on and switch off, and that was the big sort of nugget there, that I guess it separated my ability to pick up the ball from everyone else, because not only, because I mean, most people would assume this is common knowledge. I think it is anyways, but as bad as we obviously rely on clues, right? So if the more you play, the more clues you can get and you can read. So if a bowler's running in a little bit faster, you can pick that up. If a bowler jumps up and leans back too much, you pick that up. If I guess anything changes in the way he's gripping the ball, you pick that up. So now on top of that, if you can now get your head in the right position to track, you become almost you become unstoppable. So you pretty much remove that aspect. It's now about decision making, because you're getting yourself into good positions, but can you execute at the end of the day? So I think for me that was probably what was left, because I knew I was picking the ball up early. I knew I was tracking it, picking up length. The issue was, one, did I have the discipline and emotional control? Because the fact that you can see the ball, sometimes you start to think you can smash everything out of the park, and then the next thing you're walking back to the pavilion, and you're thinking, "Geez, I'm seeing the ball well, but I'm not converting." So that's probably, when I think of my career, I think that was the biggest letdown. Was always I was I loved the challenge. I never had issues, but I hated myself for always getting myself out, because I knew if I stayed a little bit longer, I could pretty much, go crazy. So yeah, so in terms of the process, that was it. It was down to a T, and yeah. There's another drill that we used to do with Neil where he wanted me to focus on. So if I was on like if I went to a ground, or if I went somewhere, I try and focus on things that are too far away. So try and pinpoint. So let's say there's a letter that says Dunlop, for example, on the other side of the field. Can I, zoom in on each letter and zoom out, zoom in and zoom out, and kind of really focus on that. And another thing, I got this from Michael Di Venuto, the current Australian batting coach. I think he still is. I was on actually looking at the seam when the bowler is about to release the ball, and I think I used to also be a little bit like look everywhere, but not really pick out one little thing. And once I started looking at the seam, that also made a big, 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 big difference, because before I did that, I didn't think it was possible, until he was like, it's going to take a little bit of practice, but you can see the seam. Like, you can literally see the seam. And the advantage to that is when you see the seam, you start to pick out all these little changes that the bowler does. So if he rolls his fingers one way, you'll be able to pick that up straight away, like knuckle balls, things like that. So you can start to pick out slow balls, things like that. Like, so once again, the risk is picking it up. You trick your mind into thinking you can deal with it. Sometimes it's probably not a bad thing not picking it up, because you can pretty much say, oh yeah, something's changed, but I don't know what it is, so let me be defensive. Whereas I'd try and hit those slow balls out of the park for six, because I'm like, yeah, I picked it up. But yeah, it's not always the right decision.
Those are amazing insights regarding the nuances of batting, and on top of it, that's something for me to also implement. Like, I sort of struggle a little bit with looking at the seam, particularly. So it's interesting you brought that up. So I'm definitely gonna try to push for that and try to watch the seam as close as
Mm,
possible. And did
mm.
you also implement like things such as visualization or any sort of meditation, and that, because how you talked about the Dunlop sign and looking far out and back into the sign,
Zooming in and out. Yep.
zoom in and yeah,
Yes.
because that kind of does remind me of mindful meditation to some degree as well. Trying to not think about anything, or trying to think about something particular and trying to focus on that, and giving doing breathing techniques, all that sort of stuff. So, did you have experience with that as well? Did you implement those sort of techniques?
I did. I think the biggest issue was consistency. But I definitely dabbled and tried out different things, and sometimes I would uh, change it up too quickly. But the one thing that I did try was obviously having routines. Now, there is a big difference between having routines and being superstitious, because I've picked up certain bad habits at certain points whereby, for example, I put on my left shoe first, and then if I put on my right shoe, and then I remembered as I was walking out, I'd be like, "Oh no, I'm not going to make any runs today." Like things like that. So you start creating these little hurdles that don't exist. But visualizing was a big key for me. And funny enough, when I started doing more mentoring and coaching, obviously I give kids, some semi-professional guys, I give them options, right? So, for example, before I used to, be really positive and be like, the night before the game, I've got to be, really positive, pump myself up, da 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 da. And then I'd go in a game and it didn't work, like it just wouldn't work. And then I tried one where I would actually create this crazy scenario where the wicket's unplayable. All right, like you got this 6-7 foot, fast bowler. It's a green seamer. The ball's doing all sorts, and I had to find a way to deal with that. And I just, try this way, it doesn't work. Try that way, it doesn't work. And funny enough, that was the most successful method. And now when I work with kids and semi-professionals, and to some extent, some guys that just ask me, I met a guy who's trying to get into Formula 1, Formula 2, and we were just sharing some stuff. And funny enough, things like that. And I found that to be probably the most successful method, because what it basically does is it removes the element of surprise. So you in a way, there's a psychological term called catastrophizing. So you're almost creating a scenario that doesn't exist, and you go there. You in your mind, you're faced with this scenario, and you find a way through it. But more importantly, your brain is now prepared for that. So if you turn up the following day and the wicket's green, the guy is 6'4", the ball's nipping around, it's not the first time you've experienced that, because you don't need to experience everything physically to know how to deal with it. The mental world is infinite. You can pretty much create as many scenarios. And funny enough, if you go through, or if you read Michael Phelps's preparation, it's actually pretty similar, where he went through as many scenarios as possible, as many things that could go wrong. And then once you remove that element of surprise, you get there and things actually feel easier, because you've gone through the hard stuff in your mind. The trick with that, I'm not a psychologist, so I don't want to be giving a psychological advice, but I feel like the trick with all that is to time it, like to make sure that you do that kind of preparation before you get to the game, and it works differently for other people. For me, it was the night before. I would try and remove as many scenarios. So from Thursday to Friday, I'm just working through scenarios. If I knew the bowlers, then it was even better. So I remember playing against Afghanistan, for example, where you're like you really try and stress yourself out. You're like, how am I going to play Rashid Khan? And then you watch all this footage, and you really try and come up with different methods. And ultimately, by the process of elimination, you'll come up with one style or one method that you're going to use. Funny enough, if you go in with that plan, you're much better off than, I guess, someone who's just like, oh, I'll just react. I'll just go there and see what happens. So I would have created so many scenarios and then selected one that I think, yeah, this is going to be the way, and I go in with that. And I think when you're prepared, you adjust better, because you already sort of know the outcome that you want. And you sort of, you've kind of covered, all the other things that could go wrong. So, yeah, that's probably in a nutshell. Now, I could talk about breathing as well. I mean, breathing technique is one of the most, it's one of the other important things, because, when you're an attacking guy, especially, your adrenaline, you hit a big six, and all of a sudden you get a bit of an increase in your heart rate. So it's important to understand how to actually calm yourself down, and you do that through breathing. So I think that made a big difference. I love the big stage, funny enough, because the more people, the more noise, the more I calm down. I literally, and that all started from that same visualizing technique, because I was like, what's the worst that could go wrong? I've already stepped out. So I'm ready here. So what's the worst that could go wrong? You get a duck. Okay, you just walk off. So, once, yeah. So people that have stage fright and things like that, I think it's something to try. I'm not going to say it's the solution because, I don't want to be a sports psychologist when I'm not, but definitely that worked for me. Other things that probably did, your pre-ball routine and pre-post routine. I guess just before you go out to bat, I tended to enjoy talking. Well, my biggest success came when I talked about what I was going to do just before I went into bat. So I'd be like, oh man, this guy's bowling in my zone. I can't wait to just get out there and try and smash that out of the park. I found it sort of in a way validated, I don't know, or just maybe made me feel like I was ready. Whereas when I was really quiet, really intense, really quiet and sort of really, focused, I would just tense up. Whereas if I was, not loud and boisterous, but just talking to someone and be like, no, 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 I like this kind of bowling. Like, especially fast bowlers, be like, oh man, this guy's bowling gas. I'm so excited. I like smashing, fast bowlers. I would always, that would always work well for me. But, yeah, I mean, amongst other questions you may have, that's some of the mental stuff. Meditation, not so much. I wasn't a meditator. Even diarizing, I wasn't too big on that. I think I would write stuff at the beginning of the season and then review it in the middle of the season and then debrief at the end of the season. I wasn't a night after night, day after day kind of guy. Or
Yeah, so there's a lot there. Really insightful information regarding your approach to batting.
hmm
Those 2 points I wanted to touch on what you talked about. Since you
hmm
mentioned Afghanistan, I think it's a good, since you brought up the fact that you were doing visualization before facing Rashid Khan and trying to find your own method before actually facing them, I might as well just jump to that sort of timeline in 2017 where you did open the batting against
hmm
Afghanistan and scored
hmm
54 or 55 and a
hmm
46 or 50 in that series against Afghan
hmm
some bowlers like Rashid Khan, Mohammad Nambi. They are very skillful spinners. So
hmm
are you basically saying that prior to these games and clearly like at the strike rate you're playing these spinners, you had already sort of visualized the way you were going to approach them in that game? Like, can you talk us through that connection between scoring the those runs in that series and also before the game and how you visualize that?
Yeah, so I'll probably start by saying my biggest weakness was the like having coaches that sort of put a bit of doubt in my head. So the beauty about that particular series was that was the first time, obviously. Well, I think it was maybe the second time that I had come. So I had a little hiatus from Zimbabwe, I think, and then I came back and played Afghanistan. So Heat Streak, who was the coach at the time, he was just like, man, just go there and play a game. Funny enough, I had played a lot of cricket leading into that, and I obviously trusted my game. So I am the first to admit I had phases of when I dealt with Afghanistan, Bangladesh, those turning sort of or spin friendly sort of attacks. I had phases where I was pretty confident and very aggressive, and phases where I was like second guessing myself. When I did well, I knew exactly how I wanted to play. Now I can, I'm not a Chris Gale or a Sangakkara. I didn't really dominate at the level they did, but I would probably say I was looking to attack most of the time. And the way I would do it was I wanted to get the pace. And funny enough, we played Sri Lanka in the 2015 World Cup in a warm up game. And we were just sitting around after the game. We're talking to Sangakkara and Jawad. And one of the points that they kind of were just, I think it was Brendan Taylor was asking questions. And Sangakkara said something about try and get in sync or get in rhythm with the bowler. That's the quickest way to really sort of, find your rhythm, find your touch. And that's what I always, when I did well, that's the one thing that I gave myself an opportunity to get in sync. So you've got to understand how much the ball's turning, how much the ball's skidding, how much the ball's, I guess, holding, and anything else that's happening. So this is obviously what you'd call reading the conditions. Is there a breeze, blah, 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 all this other stuff. That's a little bit secondary, but primary is what's actually happening when the ball comes out of the hand. Can you pick it? And I guess how much off the wicket is happening. Now, depending on the type of player you are, do you play off the deck or do you play, do you sort of watch the ball out of the hand and then kind of know your options straight away? Most people that don't really know how to play spin well, or most Western type of players, tend to play off the pitch. And I guess even in Zimbabwe, when the guys that are not as prolific like I was, tended to play off the pitch. So that means you've got to obviously read the conditions early. If it's skidding, then you can't be on the back foot. If it's turning heaps, you've got to try and present as much surface area. So once I knew all these things, then my options became a little bit clearer. So for example, if the ball's skidding, my issue was, not to brag, but I never thought about the size of the boundary. So I would always be like, if it's skidding and staying low, then I'm going to try and hit it like this. If your ball's shorter, especially the subcontinent spinners, they tend to undercut the ball so it skids. So if you go back, most of the time you're going to get hit on the pads, right? So that's not to say I knew that I wasn't going to do it, because just because you know it doesn't mean you're going to do it. There's still elements of, instinctively you try and preload, the ideal outcome in your head, and then hope that through instincts it's gonna happen. So that would be the plans that I had. So I always had a plan for a turning wicket. So if it's turning heaps, then I'm trying to sweep as much as I can. If it's skidding, I'm trying to take a shorter stride. And funny enough, that's my first debut, my debut in Bangladesh. That's the biggest change that I did. I found out that the wickets were skiddy, and there was a bit of turn, but they were mainly skiddy. And because the bowlers had a way of undercutting the ball, and they could hit the shiny side with the new ball intentionally. So instead of trying to go across the line, which is what I tried to do in my first game, the second game when I made the 50, all I did was I took a shorter stride and just tried to hit the ball straight back, so present as much surface area. So that was the most successful strategy I had. And then when it was turning, like in Sri Lanka, probably wasn't as much, but it was more natural spin, more natural, like it wasn't like skidding as much. It wasn't, so you could then rely on the, like the true pace and bounce of the wicket to play, so I could play more sweeps. So anytime there was consistency, it was up to me. I'll probably prefer the sweep, slog sweep. If it was just a skiddy fast bowler, then I'll try to hit them straight. And I think that's kind of like, it should be, I guess, a common thing. The bowlers that I struggled the most were left-arm spinners. And I guess I'm not the only one. I did have different plans, but I never backed myself because for some reason or another, it was just brought up, our meetings that we would have, and everyone would be like, oh yeah, they'll bring on a spinner. And most teams started doing it. So they knew I like pace, so they stopped giving me pace, or they would give me 2 overs, 3 overs, and then they'd bring a left-arm spinner because, as you know, the analysts now are so up to date, and they can actually break it down. They'll be like, if he faces 3 dots, he's going to try a slog sweep. If he does this, so it was actually cool information to have an analyst tell you how the other team was going to try and get you out. But left-arm spin, I did have some success, and majority of the time, I actually think in international cricket, I got out more to left-arm spin than anything else. And I think there's a lot of good players too that struggled with left-arm spin.
Okay, well, speaking of Bangladesh, because my background is Bangladesh, so I'm keen to sort of ask you questions about that because you had your
Mm-hmm.
debut there, faced a lot of left arm spin from memory. Shaka got some quite sunny as well. But
Mm-hmm.
before I ask those questions about your debut, previously you'd also mentioned about breathing techniques for, like, for example, when you have adrenaline rush from hitting a big shot,
Mm-hmm.
playing in front of big crowds.
Yeah.
Um, and you're saying that for yourself, you try to calm yourself down. Um,
Mm-hmm.
this is just kind of playing devil's advocate. So
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't it be useful for some players to ride on that adrenaline rush because it sort of makes them feel like, hey, okay, I can score some big runs in this over now. Like it gives them that confidence to be able to go after the bowling a bit more, if that makes sense, rather than trying to calm themselves down. So what would you say to that? Like, what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, I guess everyone deals or has different levels of adrenaline rushes. I guess my adrenaline rush, I started to shake. Like I would start shaking, like I just want to go, go, go. And from experience, and I've obviously dealt with a few sports psychologists and kind of read a few biographies. You make your best decisions when you're calm. One, two, you got to think about fighting. In general, the calm fighter is the one who lands a lot of punches. The one who just goes bam, 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 bang tends to just exert a lot of energy without actually landing any punches. So, in the same breath, right, from a cricketing perspective, I think there's a difference between letting the adrenaline just take over and relying on your instincts. Because I think when you're hyper like that, the chances are there'll be a rush decision. Like it's just, oh, geez, how did I do that? And funny enough, I went through that where I would be like, almost fighting myself. I'm like, don't. And then the next thing you just swing out of nowhere. You're like, oh, why did I do that? So that control, I think, comes when you're actually breathing normally, or you control your breathing, and you're actually making smarter decisions without holding yourself back. I think that's a fine little balance there.
Yeah, wow, like that's a really good analogy, and that kind of reminds me. I came across this analogy of when there's like two people, like back in the day, if they're walking around with their swords and stuff, and there's a troublemaker trying to attack this guy. The one that takes the sword out of their sheath or whatever it's called, slower,
Mm-hmm.
is probably the skilled swordsman, as opposed to someone that kind
Mm-hmm.
of takes it out in a very very quick way, where they feel like they have to make a kind of rash decision in terms of getting attacked and whatnot. So yeah, someone that kind of takes it out in a calm way, sort of knows what they're doing, and is going to probably more likely make a better decision. Because if you kind of take it out really too quickly, and it ends up being someone that's innocent, then you're going to cause harm, right? Like as opposed to someone that's doing harm. So yeah.
Yeah, I think in general, you just gotta look at the calmer person, whether it's a batter, the guy who just walks in calmly, he just looks relaxed. They're the more dangerous ones. They're the ones that they come with all this energy, tend to almost not last. I've never seen anyone come with that crazy energy, and I mean, some people can say, maybe Manas can be a little bit energetic sometimes, but I think when you watch him walk out to bat, he's still pretty calm, right? Like he starts the mannerisms once he's in, but in that walk and that it's calmness. I feel like, yeah, the calmer you are, the more you can make better decisions. I think, but that's just me.
No, definitely. Like Masters is a great example because everyone talks about how hyper energetic he is, but I feel like when you watch him in Test cricket, he's pretty like he's got his process. He's somewhat like calm at the crease. Even the way he bats, he's not doing some wild slugs or this and that. He kind of has his
Mm,
calm
mm,
process as well, but uses his
mm,
energy in a productive way too. So definitely, I think it's just about knowing the person or yourself in terms of if you're calm by nature, if you're hyper energetic, and sort of working out
mm,
best process for each person. So I wanted to sort of jump onto your international debut. You touched on it. So
mm,
from what I can see here, it was in November of 2014. You made your
mm,
international debut against Bangladesh. So
mm,
to walk us through, I guess, leading up to the debut, like how did you find out you were going to make your debut? What was your emotions? Were you excited for the challenge? I think it was in Bangladesh as
mm,
well. So obviously, there was.
mm,
You also mentioned the preparation in terms of batting it according to if the ball is undercutting it versus if someone is bowling in a different manner and adjusting accordingly if the pitch is more skiddier, etc. So walk us through that sort of little period leading up to your debut and your preparation that you did.
Yeah, so I obviously I had it was nearly a guarantee that I was going to play because when I got on the plane, yeah, the Zimbabwean coach had kind of said, "You don't need to go through any trial. You know, you're pretty much a walk-in." And I think they'd lost a few senior players, whether it was injury or whatever. So they were a bit short, anyways. So when I arrived, I think that the test team had already uh, I think they were about to finish or something. I can't remember. So there was a bit of a gap, and there was two warm-up games in Bangladesh, and I didn't end up playing them. Or I might have. I don't remember playing a warm-up game actually, but we did train in the conditions, right? And one thing I did notice was, wow, the ball skids because first things like would rock up. And then like the nets aren't even ready, and then you see them just water the nets, and then the next thing they get the roller out, and then put the stumps there, and then within an hour you're ready. So then I was like, wow, this red soil really dries up pretty quick, and yeah, the ball just stayed low and skidded, So that was an eye opener because I had been sweeping every day in preparation before I got on the plane because I was like, spin. I'm gonna sweep. I'm gonna sweep. I'm gonna sweep. And funny enough, I get there, the ball's skidding, and I'm like, oh, let's throw that one out the window. So it was one of those cases where you've got to adjust quick. And to be honest, the first game I got bogged down, and what do? You revert back to your base level. And I tried the slog sweep, got bowled. The ball just skidded through. And funny enough, as I was walking, I was like, "Why did you do that? You knew that was the wrong option." And I had to adjust quick. My advantage was I had real belief in my game. I was so confident that I could make runs. And funny enough, I did adjust. So it started well. I guess they didn't know that I preferred quick bowlers, so they always started with quicks, and then they ended up removing the quicks pretty early because I would tee off, and then they'd bring the spinners, and then I'd kind of well, I went a bit slower. So now, because I had practiced so much sweeping, my options to go down straight weren't as good. So I was batting a lot with Brendan Taylor, who was very good at playing spin and manipulating the field. So I guess the first game was a bit slow, but in order to do what the team needed, I put away, any sort of high risk options, and I was trying to just hit the ball hard. And the coach then was like, "Listen, you've got to try. You're a powerful guy. A lot of these guys will be scared if you just smash the ball straight back at them." So my setup for spin just started to be like I just wanted to set up to protect the stumps and try and hit the ball straight back at the bowler. And funny enough, if I hit it a meter or two either side, I knew it was runs. So by simplifying it, I took the risk. I reduced the risk, obviously, from the horizontal shots, and just started to go more straighter, and that helped me. And obviously, the team needed me to stay up there, so it reduced the pressure of me trying to score quickly, which not so much that it was pressure, but it obviously felt much easier if I didn't have to try and take them on in their own conditions. So I kind of just started to adjust and try and wait. Even the back of a length, I'd just try and wait and just punch it straight back. And funny enough, the ball, just skids through as well when you hit it in Bangladesh pretty hard along the ground. So that worked, and that gave me a lot of confidence. But more importantly, the fact that I did cash in when the quicks came on did help because it made me not just, I guess, like it didn't. I didn't just, I wasn't bogged down for too long because I wasn't getting out to the spinners, and then they'll try something else, and then I'd cash in on the quicks. But I did learn a lot from watching Brendan Taylor, especially because he was really good at manipulating the field.
I mean, touching on Brendan Tell, I was going to ask as well, like in that team, you were playing with Elton Chikumbura, who was the captain, Hamilton
Mm-hmm.
Matsakatsu, who's had a successful international career, Brendan Taylor,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, as well. We know how good he is. What was that experience like, training? I'm sure, I assume that you were probably training with them as a group first time before you were sort of playing this series. So, what did you take from that experience, like playing these sort of players? And, you're obviously
Mm.
mentioning how good Brendan Taylor is with spin. Like, what did you take away from all those learnings?
I mean, preparation for starters. So a lot of people don't know the story with Zimbabwe, but we were not like, it's not like here where you've got academies, you've got nets, you've got bowling machines and all this stuff. So um, the guys that have kind of made it, they have majority of the time put in some serious hard yards, some serious sacrifices. So when I went into that team, I pretty much realized that people like Taylor were not. I mean, they might have had a certain level of natural ability, but they were hard workers. So Brendan Taylor, Hamilton were the first two at the nets. Like most of the time, it was actually like a gift and a curse because you watch them, but they end up batting for so long that by the time you actually get your opportunity, the throwers are almost pretty tired. So you kind of have to become creative there and try and. But they would most of the time they would leave the hotel earlier than everyone else, and by the time you get to the nets, they've had so much time in the net, so they hit the ball. Now you go into the Australian team, people say the same thing about Steve Smith, people say the same thing about Marnus, and people say the same thing about Kane Williamson. I don't think it's a coincidence that these guys that perform consistently well have this stamina and they hit a lot of balls, because that's what I saw from these guys. They trained a lot. Now I also feel like it was tougher, and if you can look it up if you want, but we played a lot more cricket in the subcontinent compared to, I guess, like Australia and New Zealand and England. So the numbers that those guys have could have been better if they played in, like, yeah, all over the world consistently, like, play in Australia, New Zealand, England. So I feel like it's taken for granted how good these guys are. Sean Williams is another one. I don't think he's definitely in the top three players in the world against spin, Zimbabwean guys. So watching them, and I remember playing against India in New Zealand at the World Cup, and watching these guys, just toy around with the Indian spinners, Ashwin and Jadeja, the guys that were really at the top of the game. And I was really impressed, because now you're not in the subcontinent where the odds are more in the subcontinent bowler's favor. You're now in a neutral venue, so you can really see the skill. Now, in terms of specifics, Brendan Taylor was good with options, so he had a lot of options. And from a mental skills perspective, I like to call it he had a hierarchy system against each type of bowler. That's my observation. I would probably different for him if you ask him, but from my observation, he would rank his options. So if a left-arm spinner came, he knew straight away he had two options. One was to play with so if the ball wasn't turning, if it kept coming into his pads, he was able to just tuck it for a single into that gap on the leg side, or he would just try and hit the gap between mid-off and cover straight, sort of with the angle. Right, and then occasionally he was able to hit that inside out of a cover as well. So those were like his, the rank was, first up is I'm gonna go like this because they need to turn the ball first for me to actually feel like I need to play with the spin. So he would always start by attacking it. Hamilton, different. He tried to hit everything pretty much. So if it was a left arm spinner, he'd try to hit everything straight back to them, which was completely different, because when I went there, I was trying to hit them towards mid on and I was struggling. And I'm looking at him going like this. I'm like, isn't that counterproductive? But it worked. And because I hadn't practiced it, I couldn't really adjust quick enough to doing that. So I stuck with my method. It worked. But if the ball was to turn, I would have been in trouble. But so once again, the other guy, Sean Williams, he also has a hockey background, so he is able to pretty much hit against the spin, hit the ball late. He's pretty much a guy that can maneuver gaps. And I was also lucky to watch Brian Lara bat. He came and played a tournament in Zimbabwe, and he was one of the best players of spin. So watching him toy around, I remember I was fielding at point, and when a spinner came on, he was able to hit on either side, like there. Like every ball, you decide, okay, I'm going to go this side, I'm going to go that side. So I realized that when you're playing spin, and I teach that now when I talk, or when I'm coaching kids, I'm like, you've got to have options against spinners, but there are different options for different spinners. So if it's an off spinner, you've got options for an off spinner, and you should rank them, because straight away, if you already have the clues, the basic clues, like the wicket's normal, the ball's not turning so much. When an off spinner comes on, you know that you can hit pretty much with the sort of perceived spin, right? So it's just turning a little bit. You can just pretty much go mid on. That's the first option. And then if it's just one of those straighter ones, or the guy has got that action where he's trying to take it away, then you start to have the option to hit it through the covers as well. So once you rank your options, you're not thinking, because the last thing you want to do is be really conscious, because that means you take time away from decision making. So you become slower, which means you end up, rushing your decisions, and then that all leads to bad execution. The slower you are in making a decision, or the more options you give yourself, the slower it is to select. So you want to rank your options, and I would probably say have 2 or 3 for each type of bowler. So a leg spinner for me, hitting through the spin towards cover and mid off, or sweep shot if it's turning. That's it. And then, an off spinner, have options. A left arm spinner, have options. Practice them, make them part of your repertoire, and you won't have to think.
Amazing. Yeah, like I guess the strategy side is super important for a batsman, and the planning required and knowing your strengths. It's a whole journey with, understanding a batsman's strength and their own strength. Like as you mentioned, with Hamilton Matsakatsa, like he has a different way of playing, and he has his own strengths, and he had his own strategy as opposed to yourself to like left arm bowlers. So everyone's definitely different, but I guess the foundational aspect is there. Like it's universal, where they're trying to set a template for themselves in order to maximize, scoring options, as you were talking about. So that universal foundation aspect's there, but it's just different depending on the strengths and skills of different players. So with the second game, just to touch, because you did hit that 50 about run a ball, and you're facing the likes of Shakib Al Hassan. How was that experience, like facing him and his bowling? I'm sure you would have, tried to undercut it, and you mentioned like you're trying to, hit it towards the sides, back past him. So how was that experience facing him?
Yeah, I mean, it was for me. It was probably the most rewarding experience, because I had made a big change overnight. So I've gone from months and months of doing one thing, and then bang, I've got to change it, and then it actually worked. It was rewarding, and more importantly, it silenced the crowd. Like it's one of those very noisy experiences. The crowd really goes berserk over there. So um, hearing them, or them going quiet, and you kind of just go about it, was good for us, because it meant that we were on top. So I really enjoyed that, and obviously, once again, I battled a lot with Brendan. So we ended up like those were some of the more important sort of opportunities for us to gel and bond, and become mates, and really, yeah, you sort of feel like you belong, I guess, because doubt is a traveling partner in most things you do. You're not sure whether you're capable, even though you have the confidence. But until you actually do something, there's always that little bit of lingering doubt that, oh yeah, what if I flipped it? What if it's just a little a bit fast tracked, or it's a mistake, or so yeah, I feel like it was not the best series for us in terms of the fact that we lost every game. But for me, I left there thinking to myself, we were in the game every game, and we threw it away. So it was pretty much like it was up to us to become better. We weren't getting smashed by these teams, like we were in the game. Like most of the time, me and would have a partnership, 100-run partnership, and then we collapse. So that just meant that, if we batted through, we would have won the game. So there was that belief as well, even though we lost. But it was my first time in those conditions, and the fact that I had found a way, that also became a mantra in my life, not just in cricket, but you can find a way to pretty much do anything. So anytime I get
Yeah,
stuck, I'm just
definitely.
like,
And
find a way.
amazing, yeah. And speaking to what you were talking about, being in the game throughout that series, in the fourth ODI, you just narrowly lost by the 21 runs. And with your bowling in particular, you've gotten 3 wickets. Two of them, it was Tamim Iqbal, the opening batsman, and Shakib Al Hassan. So walk us through your bowling performance that day, because obviously, you really did well with the bat and ball.
Mm, mm. The bowling definitely was taking a bit of well, it was on the back seat, I guess. It was more like, so I was naturally gifted. I was an athlete. So bowling, I never really practiced bowling. Funny enough, I did invest a lot of time when I first came here through the academies and learning about the technique aspects of fast bowling and understanding how it all worked out. And after a certain point, it was just too painful on the body. Now, I knew what I needed to do. So the role was pretty simple. Come in as a first change, second change bowler, hit the deck hard, use your variations, and try and just be the container really. So I guess because I was fresh on the scene, the guys were trying to take me on, and yeah, they weren't obviously sure of what I was capable of doing. So yeah, I might have caught them by surprise, or yeah, but it wasn't like I didn't set anyone up or try to, like it was one day cricket. So I knew the role was pretty simple. I was just the container, and then the results there. It was for me. I was aiming to go under fives or five and under, and if I did that, I was playing my role. I wasn't really the attacking bowling option. So yeah, it was good fun to contribute from that aspect, but it was really hard on the body because I was bowling my overs, and then I was sweeping. So I'd go from sweeper to sweeper, which is deep cover to deep cover, pretty much every over. So I was pretty burnt out, and I was also struggling with adjusting to the conditions. The gut wasn't that great because of the food. I was adjusting to that as well. So I'll probably say the bowling ended up taking more of a backseat because of that, because it was pretty challenging conditions, very hot, and then yeah, you're losing a lot of fluids. But I did enjoy contributing. If I didn't, have a good day with the bat, I would always look forward to bowling, which is the advantages of being an all rounder. But
And
I equally love fast bowling, but I just didn't like doing it um, at that stage.
yeah, I can imagine with fast bowling and the toll you have to carry, and it's obviously exhausting. Like you would have to balance training with bowling in the nets and then batting, so it's a lot, obviously. For
Mm,
that's why all rounders like that are rare, I guess. Like most by either specialist bowlers or specialist batsmen. And
mm,
kind of
mm,
fast forwarding to 2015, because he played in the 2015 World Cup in Australia
mhm,
as well, from memory.
mhm,
um,
mhm,
what was your experience like playing against teams like Pakistan, India, South Africa? Because when you versed South Africa, you'd face the likes of Delstein and Morne Morkel, and you also hit a few boundaries against them. So walk us through that
mm,
experience of facing Delstein and Morne Morkel.
mm. I feel like it's easily the best tournament I've been a part of, because I think it was a neutral venue. Um, every team was making runs. The conditions were just perfect for batting. I think, yeah, there were beautiful wickets. So it was a good series. Personally, I was a bit more disappointed because I got shuffled around a bit. Zimbabwe just changed coaches, and I think we had Dav Watmore who came in at the time. Now I had made my debut under a different coach, and then yeah, when he came on board, there's a few players that were injured that came back into the squad, so they pushed me down, and then he really wanted me to bring my bowling to the fore. So he was like, no, 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 no. Let's use your batting as more of like a finisher because you're the only one. Well, me and Elton pretty much were like the two guys who he said, you guys can clear the ropes at ease. So why don't you come in at the end? And I hated that. And I was like, no, 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 no. I want to be at the top. I've shown that I can do it. So I think that was just me not adjusting well to like what the team needed. You can never blame the coach because I wasn't established. I had to take every opportunity. So now I did enjoy. Obviously, I mean everyone talks about the six against Monemoko, the big six that I hit in that game against South Africa. But once again, I came in and I was pretty much. I think I came in number 7 or 8, and we started well. We were in a pretty good position, but once we lost all those batters, and I came in, and I think I only had the tail. I was batting with the bowlers, and I kind of had to tee off and kind of put a bit of scare into them because it did come off. But yeah, it was equally disappointing just because I knew that my game was suited to facing those quick bowlers, and I hadn't had an opportunity to face them, and I kind of came in and faced it the death. Now, facing teams like Pakistan, it was good. It was good. The biggest challenge, I guess, for me was facing that Muhammad Irfan, 7 foot at the Gabba, bounciest wicket in the world, and it was very hard to really track the ball because the ball was just shooting off a length. But the atmosphere, I mean, the games were just packed out. Against Pakistan, we had a big crowd. Against India at Eden Park, we had a big crowd. The game was close until we dropped a few catches. We would have literally, we were in the driver's seat. And then we lost games we should have won. We lost against Ireland. We should have won that. And I guess against Pakistan, we were pretty much in a good position. We threw it away. So once again, we were close, and I think a lot of people started to see that Zimbabwe cricket wasn't as bad. I think because once the conditions were neutral, we could compete, but we just hadn't been winning, so we didn't know how to win games. So overall, I feel like it was a good experience overall. I mean, it's always good to be part of a World Cup, and more than that, where the conditions are more in the favor of the batters. It's evens it out. So yeah, it was good, and we traveled around New Zealand, played on international grounds that in here in Australia and over there. That I was pretty lucky to be a part of.
And on top of that, you had the opportunity to bowl to the likes in the World Cup, the likes of Dhoni, Kohli, Suresh Raina, Rahane. So,
Mm-hmm.
did you have like a plan or strategy prior to the game in terms of how you were going to bowl to them, how you were going to, try to contain them?
Absolutely. And to be honest, I actually think I bowled really well before I got injured. So I knew the conditions, and must have been Neil or one of the coaches said to me, a good ball is a good ball. It doesn't matter who's facing. So I backed myself, and I knew that a good ball in those conditions, one day cricket, was what they call the hip to heart length. So it's that back of a length that's hard to go forward, hard to go back. You can't really get underneath. And I was lucky. My favorite ball, my strength or strike ball was the short ball. So I had that quick change of pace because I use my shoulders mainly. So that was a bit of a surprise for them. So I would just hit the deck hard. And I remember against South Africa, where after 6 overs or 5 overs, I was going in fours against AB de Villiers, Amla, Faf du Plessis. And these guys, I remember bowling to same feeling I had against AB was the same feeling I had against Kohli. These guys had this intent, like they were trying to come after you. So every ball you couldn't miss. There was this pressure. And I like to tell the kids now, like intent, you can feel it as a bowler when the batter has intent because, AB was trying to do his footwork, in my run up, and I'd see him do this, do that, trying to put me off, but I just kept hitting that deck hard, and he didn't smash me. So I was really happy. until I had to bowl at the death. And I bought one over. I think I got hit for 30, but in one game. But against India, I remember a real eye opener for me was bowling against Kohli, where I was getting through good speeds because I'd actually been injured leading into that tournament. I hadn't prepared my bowling, and then somehow just started coming out, and everything was good. And I hit a good length. He left it first ball. Hit a good length. He left it second ball. Hit a good length. He left it third ball. Hit a good length fourth ball. He left it, and I was like, "Wow, this is good." And I got greedy because the ball was carrying through nicely. I was like, if I just throw it a little bit wider, and he's going to nick off, with that, bounce. And funny enough, I just got a bit wider, cover drive 4, and next ball I tried to compensate, went on the hip for 8 runs off the over. Big lesson for me there, and it kind of validated what Neil was saying. All the good balls he left, but the moment I got greedy, I went into his scoring zone. So it was good bowling to those guys, Dhoni, Kohli, and trying to bounce them. I actually did bounce both of them. Didn't get them out, but I did bowl a bouncer at them. So it was. I liked it because these were guys that were superstars, and I felt like I was part of the clan for a little short while.
Yeah, wow, those are amazing experiences as well, and great learnings as well. And probably the last question I have about the World Cup is like because I've spoken to other international cricketers, and they've
Mm-hmm.
talked to me about how the World Cup is an opportunity to mix with other players from other teams and talk to them about their game, or work on some things, or like talk to someone else, or it could be a coach even from another team about certain aspects of the game that you want to get insights from. So, did you have that kind of moment and situations throughout the World Cup where you had the opportunity to meet or talk to a player? It could be who you looked up to, and take learnings from them
Mm,
as well.
mm. I definitely was timid. Like, I did try and hang around the senior guys like Brendan Taylor. He obviously was good mates with a lot of the guys who played around the world with him. So I'll try and whenever I'll just hang around and hear them talk and kind of grab a few nuggets. So once again, the Sri Lanka example with Jawad and Sangakkara was good against South Africa. AB, we actually ended up catching up with AB when we played in South Africa after that. So we had built a bit of a rapport there. So it was good because I feel like there's something that, that's cool about watching your idols or the guys that are really, really good. And then you watch them on the field, and then when you meet them, they're just normal guys that are also pretty approachable. So I think most if kids have that access, I think it can actually really help them, enforce that belief that anyone can be a superstar. So probably Suresh Raina. I mean, I remember chatting with him, and funny enough, I ended up playing a tournament with him last year, and we kind of bumped into each other a few times. I'll probably say at that time I didn't utilize the opportunity as much as I would have, but I've subsequently, like later in the last couple of years, playing in the Legends tournaments, I've met a lot of these legends and had some really productive conversations that have helped my coaching and mentoring. So at the time, I was mainly holding off, observing. I observed a lot rather than actually asking questions.
So, speaking of the Legends League, since you brought it up, what sort of learning did you take from that side of things, and which sort of big players did you meet and have the opportunity to speak with?
So pretty much, I mean, you can name it. I've probably been lucky to play with, it's Mitchell Johnson's, Gautam Gambhir, Jacques Callis, um, Suresh Rainas. I mean, there's just so many to name. Dinesh Karthik, Robin Uthappa. Yes, there's a whole heap. All the West Indian guys, Chris Gale, Bravo, all the, uh, you know, um, New Zealand, Guptill, you name it, like everyone, Colin de Grant, like there's just so many to name, like anyone who's retired so far. I'll probably say the standouts, Shane Watson is really good, very approachable guy, very nice, very humble, easy to talk to. He's got a book, obviously, so yeah, all his insights are in there, but it was good to chat. Brett Lee, I met him ages ago when I was with the Renegades. We actually went out with the group. And yeah, he's since then like he was pretty cool, pretty easy to talk to. Um, and then there's a lot of Indian players that would have not played a lot of cricket for India, but they're obviously part of the Legends Leagues and stuff that always happy to chat. A lot of South African players that yeah, I've kind of met and interacted along the way. Herschel Gibbs, an absolute legend. He's very knowledgeable on the game. Another one that's good on really simplifying it. Yeah, Jacques Kallis, once again, the greatest, in my opinion, the greatest cricketer that I think we've seen so far. I've missed out on the guys back in the day, so there's probably a recency fallacy there or recency effect. But I think, yeah, I was very lucky to be in the company of those types of guys and picking their brains on it. You realize that the skill never goes away. That's one. Two, the competitive juices also never go away. And three, the routines, the mannerisms never go away. So the same way they prepare, I mean, besides the fitness levels that change because they're now playing for fun, like their pre-ball or pre-match routines, the warm-ups, it's pretty much the same. The way they like to prepare their bodies and, the way they hit balls and warm up, it's all the same. So it's actually good because you can ask people questions like, oh, why do you do that? And then they'll tell you. And then you're like, oh, okay. So when you now meet a kid who's a little bit confused, you can be like, oh, he does this, he does that. It's really good when you can actually have 4 or 5 points of reference with anything that you say. So yeah, it's been good. It's obviously a chilled sort of environment with some level of competitiveness, but it's always good to hang out and talk cricket afterwards. There's a lot of guys that I love cricket. We had Robin Singh at the last Legends League, and he likes to talk so much cricket. And having played with Tendulkar and stuff, you learn a lot about Tendulkar from someone who played with him, and we'll never get that opportunity. So it was good to have that. A lot of coaches that I've met in India, Praveen Amre, he's another one who also is friends with Tendulkar, played with Tendulkar, played with other guys from that era. So they share all these stories that were successful, and then it's also good for your database, and yeah, it's like that second hand oral evidence that you can use when you're working with kids.
That's amazing. Yeah, it must have been an amazing experience having that sort of point of reference from any different players and greats of the game as well. I know in 2017, we also talked about it, about you versing Afghanistan and playing the likes of Rashid
Mm-hmm.
Khan. We scored a 54 or 55 and a 46 or 50. So that was a good series for yourself. I know you mentioned you talked about the changes you made to different bowlers and spin bowling and all that. But I just wanted to ask very specifically, like when you faced Rashid Khan, what was your
Mm-hmm.
game plan to him and how did you play him? Obviously, he was a lot faster, a lot different to Shakib Al Hassan, but what
Mm-hmm.
were the adjustments that you made?
First thing was to try and get outside off stump. And funny enough, my plan then was to try and sweep him. Not so hard, but just try and sweep him, like use his pace. He hated that for some reason. He didn't like it. So that worked. So I think the conditions weren't as skiddy, so the wickets weren't as quick as they are in the subcontinent. Like when we played them in UAE, or struggled against him. But in that Zimbabwean series, I think the first time he bowled me because the speed surprised me. I just did not, just really lazy about it. It was the first time I played against him. And then I guess what also helped was I didn't know who he was in terms of, wow, he wasn't a big name yet. So it was like you don't have that, you don't have any preconceived sort of ideas. And the guys are like, oh yeah, there's a fast leggy in the team. Ideally you play him like this. So we all have like a simple plan against him. And then once he started becoming more successful, subsequently, you have different plans for him. And I did play with him in the same team, so it was also good to watch how other guys went about it, like Nabi and stuff. And I did play in Afghanistan as well. So, but anyways, going back to that series. Yeah, it was for me. It was just I stepped outside off stump and I just tried to use the pace. And Nabi was a bit slower because the wickets were a bit slow, even though there wasn't much turn. But he was probably more smarter. Like he was the guy that I would probably say didn't have many like different types of balls, but he was using he had guile. Like he could you know release the ball same way, but different like speeds through the air and stuff. Like he picks up when you're skipping down the wicket, things like that. He was pretty smart. The professor, as they like to call him. But Rashid Khan, I found he was quite at the time, and he probably still is. He got angry pretty quick, so he's very competitive. So that always works to your advantage because I think the angrier he gets, the more he just stops trying to do his ball his best ball and just tries to ball quicker and quicker, which sometimes works to his disadvantage. So I wouldn't say that about him now, but I think back then you could easily get on his nerves too.
Okay, well, yeah, I didn't know about that about Rashid Khan. It's very interesting. And on top of that, I know that same year, you played a series in Sri Lanka as well. So it seems like you're facing a lot of spin, and you'd scored 112 of 96 balls, which is amazing. Which helped Zimbabwe to chase down 322, which was probably one of the largest chases from in ODI in Zimbabwe history to become man
At
of
the
the.
time, at the time it was the highest successful chase by a visiting team in the subcon or in Sri Lanka. I don't know in the subcontinent or in Sri Lanka, but I that was a good game. And once again, it wasn't straightforward. I mean, I got given out trying to sweep early on when I was on 10 or 12. And lucky I reviewed it because I knew the ball was missing the stumps. So um, the mental hurdle then became okay. Because I tried to sweep 3 or 4 times and just didn't time it, missed, hit on the pads, a few LB shouts. And the guy I was batting with at the time, Sean Williams, who once again I said is the best player of spin that I know, was like, nah, don't hold back, keep going. So I feel like if he had told me to stop, who knows what would have happened? Because what was actually happening in those early tries was me trying to figure out, like once again, the conditions. So trying to get in sync with the bowler and the wicket. Because early on I was trying to hit it too hard. I didn't really, have the right, sort of tempo for the shot. So it needed me to go through that sort of phase. And once I got through that, I swept everything. And I was sweeping and reverse sweeping. So I started toying with the field, like I was hitting reverse sweeps in front and behind, which was pretty cool. And I, place sweeps, and I was pretty much, hitting the ball where I wanted, and that's probably the best feeling. And once I sort of got going, it became a mental challenge now. Okay, because it's hot. You've got the team a start, but you need to go through. You need to carry the team through. So instead of probably the normal me of get in, swing hard, get out, I was like really, really knuckling down and trying to bat long. Even though the sweep is considered a high risk shot in that particular game, I turned into a go-to. Like I really felt like it was just the simplest way for me sort of deal with the spinners, and especially the left arm spinners, funny enough. And I swept and reverse swept them with zero issues whatsoever once I sort of survived those early issues.
And from where when I looked at the scorecard as well, I think Malinga and Kulasekara, Nuan Kulasekara
Mm,
were there too, and Hasaranga in one of the other
mm,
games as well. So, what was your
mm,
experience facing the likes of Malinga and Kulasekara, and what was your plans to them, prior to that game?
mm. I mean, I'm probably going to say I was lucky to face Malinga then. It wasn't a fresh Malinga, it was Malinga on the way out. So he wasn't bowling 150, but it was, 135, maybe 140. But it was, I adjusted pretty quick. So this is once again just proving the point that when you like speed, you like speed, right? The moment I saw him, I was like, okay, I like the fact that the ball's coming on nicely, but there's tail. And somewhat, I mean, this is where I love bowling machines. So I practice facing machines at pace. So I knew, for example, that with his release, I knew with the new ball, the fact that he's releasing wider, the ball would tail in for some reason instead of going away. So I was prepared for that, and all I did was I just adjusted my sort of trajectory with the ball tracking. I just said, okay, get a bit lower, take the front pad out of the way, and then just expect the ball to tail in. If it keeps going away, you'll be able to react because it's not very quick at that point. I was like, if it's 135, 138, 140, I can deal with that. So I was prepared for that, and I was just waiting for the shorter ball, which ended up being a good thing because when someone's got a low arm like that, they tend to be skiddy. So I knew if he bowls a shorter ball, I'm not trying to play a pull shot, going down on the ball because I would chop it. I'd actually try and play up. So I'd get over the infield. So you get underneath the ball. And because I trusted the pace of the wicket, I had a pretty strong game plan. I was like, yep, this is it. The best bowler for me was actually a guy called, uh, he's a fast bowler. What is his name again? He opened with Malinga. He was very skillful. I'm forgetting his name now. But the other guys, Kulasekara, once again, it was a kill or be killed situation with him because I struggled with that type of bowling, slow, big swing. So speaking to a few of the senior guys, were like, the best way is to attack those guys, get them off the best ball. So I just went after those guys like Kulasekara early and just put him off, and generally that worked because they would take him off because they thought he actually was my favorite. But I was doing that out of fear. I was like, I can't face this guy. I need to hit him. So I did that. Hasaranga, he wasn't the Hasaranga now. He wasn't as refined and fine tuned. So back then he bowled the odd short ball or the full toss, and because he was quick, he wasn't turning it as much. So he was a much easier bowler to face, and I pretty much just targeted him. Didn't really have any issues there. So that series, I guess, once again we had two series leading in. So we played in Scotland and the Netherlands, I think. So we had game time, and by then I was very very comfortable in my game. So there weren't many nerves, and I kind of had a simple game plan. So I watched the ball. I trusted my game. I trusted my options. I practiced my options. So it was just a matter of execution.
Amazing, yeah, a lot of strategy, and I think that's one thing that I'm really taking away is like the depth of analytical kind of mindset that is required, especially for international cricket, for when it comes to each bowler, how you prepare against
Mm,
them, and training hard, as you talked about earlier as well. And in that series as well, in the following games, like you'd won the series, which was a historical moment for Zimbabwe, but you'd also scored a 43 of 30 and a 43 of 32, if I recall. So those significant
mm-hmm,
contributions up top. So was that a
mm,
deliberate strategy? I think one of them was like a shortened match, slightly with
mm-hmm.
and all that. I think Duckworth's laws came into the picture. So I'm sure that's the reason why you had to have a fast start. But was that the strategy? Because you kind of alluded to it, like kind of go after them, unsettle their line and lengths. Was that something deliberate from the planning prior to those games?
Yeah, so funny enough, that's when Lance Klusener had come in and as the batting coach, and he was very smart in that he kind of saw my style and thought, you know what, this is a role player. So we sat down and he was like, listen, I see you as as a match winner for us if you can obviously execute your role in the power play. He's like, the most important thing for us is you get a good start for us, because once we have that, doesn't matter so much because we've got guys that can come in and bat through those middle overs. So the team then, it's probably the most successful era of my time, I guess, in Zimbabwe, because everyone had a role. And whenever I consult, I guess, with clubs and I'm trying to help them build a team or something like that, I normally say to them, you'd rather have a team of role players than a team with one superstar and everyone sort of trying to chip in. So our team at that time was made up of roles, and my role was to try and utilize the first six. And funny enough, we complemented really well with Hamilton because he was aggressive, but he took a bit of time. So he needed to face a few balls, right, to get him. And once he got in, he would go. Whereas I was the guy that was happy to go from ball one, and generally, I had the eye for it at the time. So I allowed him to get into his game, and I guess he allowed me the opportunity to sort of take on the ball as early. So we really complemented each other well. But the role there was we needed to give the team a quick start. And if you look, there was actually a book called Playing Against Spin, written by two analysts from England, and they talked about our opening partnership during that phase as being in the top. I can't remember exactly, but I mean, we were, 90 off 9, 90 of 8, pretty much, and most games we won. We had that sort of start, 80, 90 in the first sort of 8, 9. So going at 8s, 9s, 10s. And then by then, the middle order guys like Raza, Malcolm Walla, Sean Williams, they started to sort of come in and do what they did best. And Raza, obviously, he became more of a finisher for us. Walla played a pivotal role, Craig Irvin, those kinds of characters. So the opening spot, I mean, if you look at Zimbabwe now, it's been the main issue. They kind of cycled through, I think I was listening into the commentary last year where they were saying they had gone through 17 opening partnerships in 24 months. They'd broken the record, I think. And I feel like that was Klusener's, the thing that he identified pretty early on, that, okay, we fix this initial part of the innings, we can set ourselves up. And I really enjoyed that phase of my career because, I was pretty clear in the way I was expected to play. I was very free. I had the freedom to reverse sweep first ball game, switch hit, whatever. And we did practice all these shots, by the way. It wasn't just, just start by, do whatever you want. But we practiced it, and when it came off, it was good for the team.
That's amazing. Yeah, like you're speaking to the importance of any cricket team because at the end of the day, cricket is a team sport, and if everyone has defined roles in what they can or can't do, I think that's like and the team works together in a way where it's goal oriented, then that definitely goes a long way in getting the best out of each player rather than kind of not having defined roles and the each batsman, for example, unsure about how they should be batting or the way they should be batting or told to not bat in a certain way. Like that obviously restricts certain players when in reality they play best when they're at freedom and not thinking too much in that sense as well. So I think that's
Mm-hmm.
definitely critical in any good cricketing team. And
Mm-hmm.
not too long after as well, I know you've been so generous with your time, so I'll ask you a few questions
It's
before I
okay.
wrap
It's
up.
okay. It's okay.
But I also want to talk about your Test series debut against West Indies. So obviously that's a
Mm-hmm.
so how did that come about, and what was the emotions? Because I think when I looked at the scorecard in the first game, you'd scored a 47 of 77 in that debut
Mm-hmm.
Test match against the West
Mm-hmm.
Indies. bowlers as
Hmm.
well. So, what was your sort of game plan and approach, and what was that moment for you when you made your debut in Test cricket?
Yeah, because I sort of had, you could probably call it some sort of limited success, and Zimbabwe had been struggling with that opening spot. I think the guys, did broach the subject. It started in Sri Lanka where they were like, you want to play the test, but I couldn't. And I sort of said, no, I've got to go back. I had my citizenship ceremony. So then they're like, would you consider it moving forward? And I was like, you know what? Yeah, I'll think about it. But yeah, potentially. So once we've sort of had that, little run where everything is going well, they said, listen, we've got a series coming up against West Indies. We think you should try it out. We don't have an opener. We see you as having the potential to bring to Zimbabwe what Australia and all these other countries have, with a guy who can kind of get going from ball one. And who knows, if it works, it works. If it fails, oh well, nothing ventured, nothing gained. And with the field, up, and most of the fielders, the field is open. They got the cover open. Wide mid off. You probably have an opportunity to go. So it was just a beautiful experience for me because I went in with a free mind. I hadn't played much red ball cricket, but I felt from ball one, I was like, yep, this is not as difficult because once again, if you look, I got myself out, but um, nothing drastically changed in my game. I sort of, like I faced Shannon Gabriel, and who was quick. He was very quick, but I still played my shots. Like anytime he dropped it short, I pulled it. Playing the fuller delivery, I had to play later. Kima Roach, very accurate, obviously got me out all four times. And it wasn't more so, I was just trying to take him on. And, that probably didn't adjust like I had done in my ODI, but I found it easier. And this is not disrespect because I obviously didn't make many runs, but I actually found it easier to play red ball cricket because on a good wicket, I think you don't have to overhit the ball. Being a striker, if you can just time it, goes through the field, you'll be on 20 in no time because you're not looking as well. Because generally in red ball cricket, they are trying to make you play, so they're going to bowl full. So if you can flick, if you can drive, and if you can play the pull shot and cut, you're in the game. And so you look at the guys that obviously have been aggressive in white ball cricket, from Sehwag, and then Davey Warner for Australia. The English guys at the moment, they technically don't change too much. They hit the ball that's in the zone. It's just that they're prepared to go and play those drives, whereas before they would probably leave. But everyone's skilled enough now to understand that if the ball's swinging away, you just got to go a little bit squarer and play with the swing. So, whereas back in the day, you would allow those balls to go and then wait for them to come on your pads or come really full or come really straight. Now the wickets are generally pretty good. So my issue was more, an execution, and some part of it was decision making, like trying to, the wicket is up and down, and I'm trying to play the pull shot, and the ball, hitting me low on the pad or something. But in terms of the game, the hard part was the fitness, because I actually was going through an issue with my ankle, so I had to bowl as well. So yeah, 5 days is tough. I think that was probably the hardest part. But from a batsmanship perspective, yeah, you get yourself out. I think Test cricket is, you really do get yourself out more than anything. When you're playing, I didn't play, Dale Steyn and Jimmy Anderson, so it's probably different when you're facing those guys in tough conditions, or Josh Hazelwood, Stark. But in the Zimbabwean conditions, when I made my debut, I felt like, yeah, it was an opportunity to score runs quickly, and I was comfortable to experiment. And yeah, it's one of those things I look back and I'm pretty happy the fact that I actually gave it a crack.
And after about, I think, a year later, you also played against Pakistan and Australia in a T20 series.
Mm-hmm.
Very memorable as well. So for yourself, because one of the games you're versing Pakistan and you're facing Mohammad Amir, Hassan Ali, very gun
Mm-hmm.
pace bowlers, and he scored a 94 of 63, which is amazing achievement against such
Mm-hmm.
quality pace bowlers. So walk us through that
Mm-hmm.
particular series and the preparation you put into it, and how you approach your game against such good bowlers like Mohammad Amir.
Mm. So by then, yeah, I had my team in Sydney. I was working with a guy called Carl Jennings. I guess from a strategy, he was a fitness guy, but he was also good with helping me, I guess, with my planning and strategy, mental skills, all that stuff. So I was injured, as I was saying, after the series, I went and had my ankle surgery, so I was out for a while. And that series was that first series back. That was actually the first time I played. So I went to Sydney to train for a month before I came. Went to Zimbabwe and yeah, I was trying to get fit, trying to get the body ready, but also the mind. Funny enough, that was the first time that I probably planned the success, and it happened in terms of actually setting numbers and say, oh, okay, I want to do this, I want to do that, this is what I want to do, and visualizing the success, because there was no opportunity to play cricket. It was in the winter, so all I could do was hit balls in the machine, do my running, and do my strength and conditioning, and then most of it was visualizing. So going in, I knew I had played lots and lots of T20s, and even though it wasn't at the high level, I knew that my T20 game was really, really consistent. So it was my strength to this day. I believe, I was a bit unlucky that Zimbabwe didn't play much. I think for Zimbabwe, I might have played 7 games or 9 or something like that, T20s. So going in, I was just so excited because I knew straight away. I was like, yeah, it's T20. I know how to bat T20s, and I've got a routine. I knew how to get off. So my game is pretty simple when it comes to T20s. I am waiting for the short ball, and I'm waiting for the full ball, and anything in between, I've got options to get off strikes. So drop and run, running the ball to third man, and pretty much coming at the bowlers to affect length. So going into that series, yeah, that's all I was trying to do, and I had to just get used to the conditions because yeah, the wickets in Zimbabwe, they're not quick, and they're not very slow, but they're a little bit off pace, so it's very difficult for guys to just come in and dominate. But Aaron Finch did, and yeah, he destroyed us that series. But I also was I missed an opportunity to make 100, I guess, for Zimbabwe, the first one, which it I think it got broken recently by Raza or someone. But that 94, my everyone knew, and everyone was kept reminding me because I was seeing the ball so well that series, and I tried to get to 100 in style, but got out. And yeah, Mohammad Amir, faced some really good bowlers. Shadab Khan, and from Australia, they had Andrew Ty, Jai Richardson, and Stoinis, and what's his name, Ashton Agar. So did make a 50, a 60 something against Australia as well. So yeah, it was a good series for me considering I hadn't played any cricket. But once again, it also proved to me that generally the quicker bowlers were my preference because I did hit the spinners as well, but yeah, the teams that had good fast bowlers tended to be my favorites to play against.
And the game that you scored 63 or 52 against Australia, you'd lost that game by, was it literally came down to the last ball. So that must have been a heartbreaking loss as well for Zimbabwe against Australia.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, I knew some of those boys, like Stoyan. I'd played with him at Northcote, and obviously been in the sort of Victorian warm-up games together. So I knew a lot of those guys. So it was a little bit because I was also an Australian citizen by then, I think. So it was yeah, it was a bit weird, but it was a good opportunity to test myself against the best. And I guess Pakistan at the time were the number one T20 team in the world. So it actually gave me an opportunity. Like it was supposed to be the sort of watershed moment for my T20 career, but then I got injured and ended up missing a few months. So because I had a lot of teams reaching out through my agent from a lot of tournaments, and then yeah, I just was unavailable for a long time after that.
On top of that, I know you've been really generous with your time. I'm going to ask a few short questions before we wrap up. You played many different bowlers. Bowled to many different gun batsmen, world class batsmen as well. I guess to wrap it up, I wanted to ask who was the most challenging bowler you faced in your career and why?
um, it's got to be Mohammed Irfan because of his height. It was just hard to sort of yeah, really gauge the bounce. And he did bowl a few wides at me because, yeah, the ball was short and I like the short ball, but then it was just shooting up over my head. And anything that was back of a length was still coming through here. So it was tough because of his height and because of the bounce at the Gabba. The most skillful would be Dale Steyn. Obviously, the ball when it comes out of his, or when it came out of his hand, it looked like it was going down leg because he had that natural sort of, uh, you know, drift out of the hand, and then the ball swings, which is why he squared up a lot of batters. So he was pretty skillful in that regard. So yeah, probably I don't know. I don't know if I can select one, but if I was to choose, I'd probably say Mohamed Irfan because Dale Steyn, I feel like he was very skillful, but his action was readable. Whereas this other guy was, yeah, like it's just a nightmare trying to gauge the how much the ball's going to bounce from different lengths. From a batting perspective,
Yeah. Um, yeah. Sorry.
um, phew, I'll probably say very tough because yeah, I'll probably say AB de Villiers is the best in-person guy that I've seen. I mean, the guy was a freak. I think no one has a better game, all-round game like AB. He could block, he could strike, he could play spin, he could play pace, he could pick and choose who he wanted to take apart. I think, yeah, he's probably in my book probably the most talented batter ever.
Wow, yeah, that I mean, I even listen. I watched some of because he does some YouTube videos as well about batting and batting technique, and you can see, how much thought he puts into each shot that he plays and the strategies that he has to different bowlers. So it's very admirable, kind of seeing giving his insights and having his own YouTube channel to share those insights as well. And you would have seen
Mm.
it, I guess, firsthand in that sense, right? So I think you versed him as well. But was there any other sort of moments, opportunities that you maybe played with him or played alongside him or maybe trained, in the area maybe he was training or making those kind of close observations of AB?
Nah, not really. Once again, I observed and watched more of his interviews and YouTube, yeah, videos. Even when back then, I think his interviews, I'd be like, wow, that's why he's doing that. AB was one of those guys that was not afraid to experiment. And I think every time he'd, every new season he'd come with something. Like I remember the one time he had the little tape on his helmet, and then when I found out why he was doing it, it made sense. And then he had different setups. He had the pre-movement. He had all sorts of stuff. He'd change where he started his hands. So I like that about him because to me, it was a guy who was able to go through so many changes and still remain dominant. And I feel like he could have been way, 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 way more destructive had he obviously had the opportunity to bat in some of the innings that he never got the opportunity to bat. And remember, he was a gun fielder. He could keep. So when you think about all the other aspects that he was good at, and then he still had time to work on his batting, I think, we were lucky to witness, AB's feats. But in equal parts, there were other batters that I loved watching. Kevin Peterson being one. I loved Shane Watson when he got going. I loved his style. Kohli, I do enjoy probably during his peak. Great technique. Great execution overall. So we've been lucky to witness some really good cricketers. Jacques Kallis. Amazing cricketers.
Yeah, wow, amazing experiences for yourself. And, I appreciate your time. I don't know if there was anything that you wanted to sort of share before we put the podcast on a close, anything that I maybe missed that you wanted to briefly mention.
I think I think we've covered it all. I think. It's been a long and interesting conversation, but you've taken me back to some of the times and sort of got me to think a little bit. But no, I think we've covered a lot of it. My journey. We could talk for days. Some of the things that we went through, I guess. But I feel like we've covered most of it. It's been good. It's been enjoyable.
All right, perfect. I love, this is why I started the podcast, because I feel like sometimes it's harder to gauge at a player's career, like kind of talking to them, one on one, their insights and their experiences. So that's why for me, it's all about trying to do as much research as possible, looking into the guests, careers, and the scorecards, and kind of delve deeper and kind of gain more of an understanding. Because like looking through it, and looking at your achievements throughout your career, it's one thing to read it, but now the insights that you've shared with us today, I think there's so much to unpack. Like even for myself, I'm just a club cricketer trying to make sense of my game and try to be the best I can be in my competition. But there's so much, what you shared about strategy, thinking about things, nuances a lot deeper. Obviously, you did it on a much higher level, but all those aspects of the game that you discussed, it's definitely applicable to every and all cricketers in any level essentially. So, and I know that obviously, I don't know if you do coaching now, but you have coached kids and you have that experience as well. So I'm sure that everyone that you've interacted with picks your brains regarding it. So hopefully with this podcast they also get more insights about the deeper nuances of the game. So I appreciate your time so much. I'm actually based in Melbourne too. I appreciate your time, coming on the show and sharing all these insights. So otherwise we'll wrap it up there. So thank you listeners for tuning in. So if you wanted to check out our podcast, we're on YouTube, the Cerebral Cricketer. We're on Spotify as well. So give us a 5-star rating there, and also on Apple iTunes. Share with your friends and family. We're on Instagram, TikTok, different platforms as well. So give us a follow on Instagram, and we make reels and clips and stuff like that. So many from many cricketers that we've already done in the past. So feel free to check it out and share with your friends and family too. From our special guest Solomon Mire, we wish you all the best. This is Tanzam signing off. Take it easy.